Yes, Chair, we're just about to start the meeting now. Thank you.
Okay, right.
Right,
thank you very much indeed, and welcome everyone. And hope you're all keeping well, and everybody else in your constituents and families and so on. It's still a very trying time, but we're persevering and keeping planning going, and we have to look forward to the future and hope the children all go back to school as well. So welcome to all of our members, our officers and members of the public, and we have got public speaking today. We are live streaming also. I don't think there's much else other than for me to read out the instruction that I have to read out every time that we do these meetings now. So welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee on the 1st of September, which is held obviously remotely. The meeting is being held in accordance with the emergency legislation that enables the Council to hold this meeting remotely, alongside the Council Constitution, and ensures that the Council can continue to operate and make democratic decisions in an open and transparent way. I would like to remind members that this meeting is still being live streamed to the public, and can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones, which I believe you've already been instructed to do so. Thank you. When you are not speaking directly to the committee, to ensure there is no unnecessary noise. All sections of the Members' Code of Conduct will apply to members in this virtual meeting environment and are as applicable now as they are in a traditional meeting that we generally have in the chamber, as you well understand. Can I also remind members of the meeting to ensure that their chat functionality is switched on, and should they wish to speak on a particular item, to make the request clear in that area, and will invite you to speak at the relevant point in the meeting, where you will then unmute your microphone and switch your camera back on. And if possible, trying to keep this not to too many comes and goings on a particular application. Try and make your first need to speak in one go. Decisions of this remote committee will hold the same weight as a decision of a normal planning committee, provided that the meeting remains quorate and meets its legislative requirements to make a decision, regardless of whether a member of this meeting is unable to cast their vote due to technical issues. The decision of the committee will remain valid. And I have received 2 apologies today, and the first one is from Alan Davis, Councillor Alan Davis, who I believe is not too well, so I hope he soon recovers, and also from Jez Becker. So that's 2 apologies for today's meeting. Do we have any applications for declarations of interest, please? None at all? Right, thank you. So I will now go ahead with accuracy only of the last meeting. If there is no need for anybody to highlight any accuracies that need to be corrected, I shall sign them at the end of the meeting. So could somebody move the minutes, please?
Move, Chair.
That's Councillor Evans has moved the minutes. Do you have a seconder, please, Councillor Evans?
Seconded, Chair.
Right, thank you both, and I'll sign them at the end. We'll now go to the first application of the afternoon, and this it's not on the first on the agenda, but as we've got public speaking, the first application is on page 37 to 50, and this is 00234. This is Vinegar Hill for 2 dwellings there in Vinegar Hill, and I believe Andrew, you're doing this. So sorry, I've read it the wrong one. Yes, that's right. It is first of all. Andrew, is that yours?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just by way of introduction, my name is Andrew Jones, Development Management Area Manager. Just
Thank you, Andrew.
getting presentation. Just bear with me one moment, members. To the correct slide. There we go. Thank you. So this is a full application for the erection of 2 detached 2-storey dwellings located off Vinegar Hill in Undy. And just for members' awareness, the application is presented to Planning Committee today as there have been more than 5 objections from separate households. So you can see the site on screen there, circled in red and at a higher scale on the pinpoint map. So the site, this application site measures approximately 0.3 hectares in total, and as I said, is located off Vinegar Hill in Undy. So that's the site plan there, edged in red. And you can see there the aerial photography showing the full extent of the application site. You can now see the proposed site plan where the two dwellings would be situated, with, as you can see there, off-street parking and turning to the front of each dwelling, and the access to be retained that serves the existing dwelling in the southeast corner of the plot. So in terms of the dwellings themselves, you can see these now on screen, and they would face to the north, both featuring a gable to the front elevation and finished with rendered walls. And there would be some timber boarding at the upper section of the front gable, concrete roof tiles and aluminium coated window frames. As you've seen in the officer's report, it's just a sort of layout view there. As you've seen in the officer's report, the number of units has actually been reduced from 3 to 2. In addition to this, the scale of the properties have also been reduced and designs changed, and the siting of the dwellings has also been revised, which has seen them move further away from common boundaries. Members will have seen the video of the site, but I'll just quickly run through the site photographs for the purposes of clarity. So the first view there is taken from the west, looking to the west rather, looking to Walnut House from the entrance. It's a view looking north towards Pathways, which is the host property for the site. And that's a view looking towards Blue Water, which is a separate property to the north of the site. And this is a view now taken from the host site Pathways, looking down across the sizable garden to the south. I'll just leave it there on that sort of what's the GI plan? It's a site layout plan. So firstly, members, in terms of principle and material considerations, the site is located within the Mega and Undy development boundary and forms part of the Sevenside sub-region. So it's accepted in principle. And in terms of affordable housing under policy S4, a combined financial contribution of £21,158 towards local affordable housing would be required and to be secured through Section 106 agreement. In terms of other material considerations, firstly, in terms of visual impact, as you'll have seen on the slides, the dwellings themselves adopt a simple contemporary design solution. You may be familiar with the area, but in the surrounding areas, there is a variety of house styles and ages with no one uniform pattern, most of which are detached and located on reasonable sized plots. And as you'll have seen from the photographs and the video, the site slopes steeply from the host dwelling, the Pathways, and the ridge heights, in this instance being 8.7 metres, are not considered to be unduly prominent or alien to the context or local environment, with only limited views from wider public vantage points. With regards to residential amenity, there are 10 residential properties adjoining and adjacent to the site. You'll have seen in the officer's report a detailed breakdown of distances to these surrounding properties. Of note, however, is the front elevations that look towards number 4 Broadlands and Blue Water House, but these are at oblique angles and of a distance over 19 metres, and on balance, officers are satisfied that this is acceptable and would not result in an acceptable loss of privacy or overlooking. With regards to highways considerations, the site has been visited by the council's highways engineer and no objection has been provided. As part of their assessment, they've also considered the impact of future housing developments in the vicinity on Vinegar Hill and do not consider that the cumulative impact of these, combined with the current proposal for just 2 dwellings, would have detrimental harm to highway safety. As noted previously, the site is fully compliant with the adopted SPG in respect of off-street parking, with both plots having sufficient turning room also. In addition to this, further improvements to the existing access would be secured by way of planning condition. Therefore, subject to all of the conditions set out in the officer's report, and as I said, the signing of the Section 106 agreement in respect of affordable housing, the application is presented to members with the recommendation for approval.
Chair, you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Right, thank you. There's a bit of delay, I think. I believe Lisa Dimmock, Councillor Dimmock is the local member and wishes to speak on this application.
Chair, we have public speaking next.
Sorry, are you
Yes,
with us there, Lisa? You are, right. We do have public speaking. All this is a bit new to me as well, so we're learning as we're going along. So the first one to speak, I believe, will be Maker Community Council. Or no, sorry, it's
Chair, if I may, Chair, if I could come in there, Councillor Dimmock as a local member would be the first speaker,
Oh, okay.
and then you would move to the objector, the objector's video.
Yeah, I thought that was correct. Sorry for
Sorry,
the
Chair.
confusion. Right, go ahead, Lisa. You're on mute. Lisa, you're on mute.
No, there's no sound coming through. It doesn't look like your microphone's muted, but there's no sound.
Nothing.
Chair, John and Nicola have just walked past. I think they're trying to solve the problem.
Right, please be patient, everyone. It's technology. I don't know whether we should go ahead to the objector and then come back to Lisa if possible, just in case she can't get on.
Chair, I think that might be a good idea if you'd like to go to the objector's video,
Yes.
and we'll try and work out what the problem is.
Right, thank you, Richard. So we'll go to Sandra Lloyd, I believe. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Is that Sandra Lloyd?
Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to correct errors in the caseworker's report as they may cause confusion. The property referred to as Lidstep was renamed Furbank 34 years ago. The property referred to as Walnut Tree Cottage is actually called Walnut House. Also, the link in the report doesn't work. Thank you. I'll start my 4 minutes now. The residents have public safety concerns regarding access to the site, which we feel have not been satisfactorily addressed. The Pathways site can only be accessed via a junction on an S-bend approximately halfway up Vinegar Hill, a busy, narrow, single-track road with no pavements. The access is narrow, complex and hazardous with unique topographical features. The site access road is a piece of unregistered land over which 3 properties, Furbank, Gwynroyson and Pathways, currently have access rights. The on-site road is a private road owned by Pathways and currently serves only the existing Pathways house. All three houses were built pre-1900. From the junction with Vinegar Hill, the site access road meets the on-site road and narrows sharply to only 2.8 metres, constrained on either side by high boundary walls to Furbank and Gwynroyson. Just beyond the Pathways gates, there's a tight blind bend with a steep drop to the south. The combination of the narrow width, high boundary walls and steep drop severely reduces the turning width for long wheelbase vehicles. Visibility display is very poor and there's no pavement or refuge for pedestrians. 2 weeks ago, a delivery van, much smaller in width and length than a construction vehicle or fire engine, failed to negotiate the blind bend and damaged his van. As an experienced driver, he told me that he had serious doubts that a fire engine could navigate this bend and could fall down the steep slope onto Walnut House. The Highways reports do not assess the blind bend and no swept path analysis has been conducted to determine the dimensions of the largest vehicle that can safely navigate the turn. Importantly, there's also no fire authority assessment to determine if a fire engine can access the new houses. However, I received the following statement from Philip Thomas. The proposal meets the general requirements of a shared private drive and provides adequate access for service vehicles, including fire and rescue. The residents have provided evidence in the form of measurements and video footage demonstrating the access is not adequate and does not meet the standards in the documents that the Council purports to use, namely the Manual for Streets and the Supplementary Planning Guidance. There is a highway safety issue here, and I request that this application be deferred until such times that documented evidence against access standards is provided, in particular swept path analysis and visibility display measurements at the junction with Vinegar Hill and the on-site blind bend, a risk assessment and mitigation plan, and a fire authority assessment to ensure a fire engine can attend to the houses on the site. I've watched the videos of several recent planning meetings and I must say I'm dismayed. Some diligent members, particularly Councillor Louise Brown, try valiantly to elicit missing but important information from the planning team, but the response is often, I haven't got that information, or subjective statements like, we've used professional judgment, or we feel that it's acceptable. This has resulted in a lack of residents' trust that the process is sound.
I'm not on mute.
You've documented standards with parameters provided, such as acceptable access widths, fire authority widths, visibility displays, and evidence should be provided against those standards. This would mean that subjective statements don't have to be made. All it needs is a checklist against relevant sections of those standards, showing required parameters and actual measurements. Where there are non-compliances, provide risks and mitigating factors. This checklist should be attached to the case officer's report so that the committee members can make a fully informed and evidential-based decision. Surely, as a professional governing body, documented, evidence-based decisions would be beneficial to Monmouthshire County Council in defence of being sued for gross negligence or corporate manslaughter should someone be killed or seriously injured.
Lisa, can you hear?
Chair, I believe Councillor Dimmock is telephoning in. We're just working on that. If you just bear with us a second.
Right, thank you.
Chair, we're still having a few technical issues. Would you like to take the members' discussion first, and we'll try and get Councillor Dimmock in a little bit later, if that's okay?
Yes, that's fine, Richard. I don't know who is the next ward member, Talisa, or maybe anybody who wishes to comment now.
Chairman.
Yes.
2 points on this application, if I may, please.
Yes, certainly, Councillor Clark.
Firstly, in the building itself, we've got roof lights, 8 of them, which I think is plenty for any property. Can I suggest that they are the flush type roof lights and not the protracted ones? Then it takes away some of the effect on the surroundings. And secondly, in the general description on page 37, it talks about rendered, part of the property will be rendered. As you know, we've had tremendous problems with through colour render in the county, and can I suggest that we deliberately point out that this needs to be a sand and cement render with a coloured coating, please. Thank you.
Well noted, those conditions, and I'm sure they'll be open to more discussion. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Louise Brown next, please.
Yeah, I think the comment that I wanted to make is that a lot of the comments that we've heard from the objector is in relation to the highways issue and access, and the highways report mentions about I think it's on page 40 of the agenda, says that access should be improved. I think the problem with this site is that I've looked at the video that we've got of it and everything, and it's very difficult to actually, the photographs really don't show how the site is laid out, and I think it would be advantageous if there was a site visit for this, and the application was actually deferred so we could actually practically go and see what the points that have been made by the objector actually are on site in terms of the highways access. And I did notice that the assessment that was done by the highways was done during July, which is actually part of the lockdown period, and the traffic has been much less during that particular time. So I think that's also a relevant factor, and obviously if there are difficulties with regard to access. The other point is I noticed on the buildings that there was quite a lot of roof windows, and I don't really think that is, I don't know how well that fits in with the current street scene, or how that relates to the other properties in the area, if there are differences in the gradients of properties. You know, if some properties are on a slope, if buildings are 8.7 metres high, that makes a difference to privacy issues and overlooking and so forth. So I think this is one of the applications that would benefit from a site visit and being deferred when we are in a position to be able to do that, so we could look at it further. And I'm not really quite clear about what highways are talking about in terms of improved access. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Brown. I believe Councillor Dimmock is back now to join us. If you'd like to go ahead now, please.
I hope you can hear me. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Chair for allowing me to attend and speak on this application. I note that the negotiations happened between the officers and the applicant, and the number of properties were reduced. However, I still have concerns, especially regarding the safety on highways and access and egress to the site. I just heard the end of Councillor Brown's submission to this. I also would like it deferred until the planning committee can attend site and see this for themselves. I lived on Vinegar Hill for 5.5 years, so I'm fully aware of the hardship residents suffer with regards to traffic on this one track lane that has no pedestrian footpath. It's used as a walk route from the Rockfield development, Vinegar Hill, and obviously soon to be the Bellway site, to get to Undy Primary School. A lot of children commute along that one track lane with nowhere to go, and obviously we're living in a time of where you can get things delivered to your front door. There's a large volume of traffic that are using that road at the moment, and I have huge concerns for their safety, people using the road, and also getting in and out of the proposed site. I know that the applicant did request access off Penny Farthing Lane. I was wondering why that was rejected by planning, but I would like to see this deferred and for the members to attend site and see it for themselves. If that isn't going to happen, could we possibly get a fire authority assessment done, or a street path analysis to share our findings with residents and offer some assurance to show there's sufficient space to access and egress the site as suggested by highways and planning for both construction and emergency services. You know, I've walked those roads daily with my own dogs, and I cannot see how a larger vehicle, a heavy articulated vehicle, can get through that S-bend at the top of Vinegar Hill. So yes, I do have huge concerns and would like to see it deferred.
Thank you, and thank you for managing to join us, Councillor Dimmock. I'm sure everybody's been able to hear what you've had to say. Okay. We've also now got Councillor Roger Harris who wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've had a look at the videos of the access, and I know it's a single track lane, but I live up a single track lane, and I know anyone that does has to be particularly careful. I've lived up a single track lane for 40 years and never had an accident. But what is being inferred is that if that lane is not accessible at the moment by fire engines in particular, it means all the properties, including the pathways, cannot be accessed, and I'm sure that really can't be the case. From the point of view of looking at the access from pathways, there seems to be plenty of vision in either direction, as I've seen from the videos, and it doesn't matter how many other properties are up there. There's only one vehicle at a time can egress from the from. Are we going to look at the pictures now?
Sorry, Roger, I don't know quite what's happened. We've gone. I can see it now. Thank you.
I can see the picture. Pathways is able to access the highway at the moment, so two other properties on there should also be able to access the highways, and if Pathways can do it safely, I see no reason why the other two properties can't access safely. So I'll rest my case there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Murphy next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And picking up from Councillor Harris's point, looking at that photo there, the access is onto the right part of the bend. There's plenty of visibility there. I take the point too that existing properties will have had to have been serviced by emergency vehicles. I'm sure if a refuse truck can get up there, a fire engine can get up there. So I really don't see what the problem is there, although I do appreciate why people are concerned. I don't believe that the additional properties are going to create that much more traffic. There seems to be a perception always that there's going to be vehicles running back and forth all the time, and of course in reality there's not. So on balance, I really don't see any reason to defer. And when would we defer to? The big problem at the moment, as we know, is that with social distancing and all the other restrictions, goodness knows when we would be able to have a site visit. And in any event, most of us have been to that part of Vinegar Hill on numerous occasions anyway. So I really can't see the practicalities of deferment. And I don't think the highways issues are quite as difficult as people's imagination. So that's about all I've got to say on that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Yes, as suggest be deferred, it could be another 12 months. And to do site visits individually, I mean, that is a bit ridiculous with the scheme of things, with social distancing and everything. You couldn't have all of us going individually. And of course, we're going into the winter as well. And I think, as they're stating, children going up and down there, it's not a racetrack or anything like that. And I think most people in a built-up area should be abiding what's in their surroundings that they're in. I will quickly take another comment from Councillor Brown, but I do not want people keeping on coming back in, prolonging things that maybe already have come to conclusion. Councillor Brown, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think with regard to the comment by the Highways officer on improving access, I'd like to have some response from the officers about that and how that could be achieved. In relation to the issue about lockdown and so forth, I was on a planning committee in another area, and on occasions we drove to the sites in our own cars, and it will be possible to do site visits in this way and you know, basically maintain social distancing at the same time. So I don't think, I think on occasions when you actually do need to have site visits, then I don't think that that should actually be a reason for saying that you can't defer it for a site visit, because I think there are practical ways of dealing with this, including members driving in their own car and maintaining the 2-metre distances while listening as a committee and listening to other officers. So I think it is practical, so I don't think it should necessarily be ruled out because of those particular reasons. Thank you.
I think in the past we always did go in our own cars, which was quite a big cost as far as travelling expenses is for the council, and I think we have to be sensible. And I think, as Councillor Murphy suggested, most of us know the area quite well. We've been there for other applications as well. So I think if any of the officers, especially Andrew, who's presented it, does he wish to comment on any of this now before I go to the vote?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, there's quite a few points there just to pick up. I'll try and go back to the start, if I may. Just on Councillor Clark's point, just to confirm, it is a sand cement render proposed. And with regards to the roof lights, there's 6 in the roof, but if the suggestion was that they were the low profile conservation style roof lights, then yes, that is something that can be conditioned as part of the scheme. In terms of the access details, so all details, there's no details at this stage regards the access improvements. The condition requires these to be submitted to us. I'd imagine these would be primarily with regards to surfacing improvements, so that, you know, things like material aren't dragged out onto the carriageway from the site, and that is improved as part of that. The other thing to mention with regards to access and conditions is that for larger vehicles, and certainly during the construction phase, as members would have seen, there is a construction traffic management plan condition attached. So that again would be subject to consultation with the Highways Department. And I note the observation that the Highways engineer visited in July during lockdown, but this site, as members have visited Vinegar Hill many times, obviously our highways engineers, in this case Mark Davis, is very familiar with the traffic movements in the area, in the locality, and I think his judgment is that, you know, the cumulative impact is acceptable. So I think just in terms of any other points that have made. I mean, that the issues of site deferral is a matter for members to discuss and has been done so. But I think from the officer's point of view, I say that the render is, to confirm, the render is already sand cement render. We can condition that they are low-lying conservation style roof lights. The access improvements details will all be submitted, so there's nothing to show you now, but that would be primarily sort of surfacing improvements. And then the traffic management plan would safeguard then all parties when larger vehicles would be there for a prolonged period during the construction phase.
Thank you for that, Andrew. I think that's all that needs to be commented on that, and we'll include those conditions, etc., that has been highlighted in the report and by members. It has been suggested by Councillor Brown for a deferral. I don't know whether you would like to vote on deferred. If so, if Councillor Brown wishes to do that, we can take a vote on it. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, you know, because it's been a request by the ward member, then I think obviously, you know, it's something that the committee should consider. But obviously, it depends if I can get a seconder for the request for deferral. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do you have a seconder for deferral? It doesn't look as if anybody has come forward, so I won't take that as a vote. I will now get forward on into the application to see if anybody moves approval of the application. Anybody wish to move approval for the application?
I'll vote for I'll give approvals, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Do you have it?
I'll second, Chair.
And Councillor Harris to second that. So could I have a show of hands now in the chat bar now that will be in front of you? Sorry
to interrupt. I thought the procedure was to go back to the ward member before a vote was taken in committee.
Well, if Lisa,
if the ward member wants to speak, of course.
Yeah, exactly. It is very difficult to do all of this when she's having difficulty herself. I don't know if Lisa is still with us now.
Can
if you want
still
to
hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you, Lisa. Do you wish
Okay,
to sum up or anything before I take the vote?
Yeah, I'm really disappointed with some of the comments. I can assure you I haven't imagined the problems on Vinegar Hill. Obviously, you said with regards to a CTMP, Andrew, you know, can I have some input on that with regards to time constraints, you know, when they can access site, vehicles cannot exceed a weight limit, a banksman being present when larger vehicles, when there's being deliveries, you know, can I have some input into that, please?
Andrew, do you wish to comment?
Yeah, no, of course, as part of the formal discharge of condition application process, absolutely, Councillor Dimmock, and if the community council, if need be, as well as obviously our own highways team can certainly be consulted and have an input on that process. Absolutely, yes.
And obviously, we can request a fire authority assessment. Can I request that as a member? Do you know?
Andrew, do you know the answer to that request?
In terms of that, well, officer's view is that it's not necessary to inform the planning application. Whether that could be done outside of the planning process through other means, I'm not sure. But I think, you know, that the key point is for members today determining this planning application, the view of officers and the highways team is that assessment's not needed based on.
But the reason for it is people have said about accessing Pathways House itself, but from what I understand, the access for a fire engine would come from Penny Farthing Lane in that turn off directly outside Pathways House. Now, I may be wrong, but I understand that was the plan. That's how an emergency vehicle like a fire engine would actually get to that property. Obviously, these houses are a lot further down the driveway, more towards the entrance. That's where my concerns are.
Okay, well, like I said earlier, I'm not sure the arrangements are in the event Pathways itself would currently need the assistance of a fire engine. This proposal is putting two further properties on that site, albeit slightly closer to Vinegar Hill, but I don't think there's really grounds, certainly not our highways engineer's grounds to request that information, or be any grounds to resist the application in the absence of that information.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much for your input this afternoon, Lisa. We'll now go to the vote because Councillor Murphy has moved approval, seconded by Councillor Roger Harris. Could you please now vote in the chat bar?
Is the chat bar up, Chair? I haven't got one.
I've had mine, so you should have done.
It is there, Tony. Perhaps you should scroll down.
Yeah, no.
Maureen, have you got your camera on?
I also have a problem.
No,
I haven't got my camera's muted. Crossed. Ruth.
Oh, right, thank you.
I got something wrong here. I don't know what it is. I can't get my chat bar up. I got you there.
Councillor Howard has abstained because he's only just joined us, so he isn't really able to vote on that application. Denzel, I expect you have seen the vote.
Yes, I was going to give them a couple more minutes if they're having technical difficulties.
Right, okay.
We've got 8 for and 1 against and 1 abstention. There's 14 in attendance today, so even if the 4 that haven't voted yet were to vote against, the motion would still have passed. So I'm quite happy to proceed if there's technical abilities stopping and confirm that the vote is passed.
Can I abstain on this, Chair, instead? I can't get my chat bar up.
Right, thank you very much. So that application has been carried and passed. So thank you very much, Damsel, for the result. We'll now go on to the second application of today, and that is 00537. That is in St Bride's, Caldicot. And I believe this is Andrew again.
Yes, thank you, Jess. Myself again. I'm just going to apologies for the skip through the slides.
Thank you, Andrew.
Take you to the page. One moment. Right, thank you, Chair, and apologies for the delay there. So this is an application for a 2-storey extension to rear barn, and that's in St Bride's, Netherwent. You can see the site location plan there on your screen, and that's it there. It's context within a small group of buildings. And the application, just to point out, is presented to Planning Committee today by request of the local member, that's Councillor Murphy. So as I said, permission is sought for a 2-storey extension to the converted barn. And as you can see, that's the site there edged in red. So just members will have seen the video, but I'll just run through the photographs of the side. So this is the building subject application, rear barn. That's building there. You can see then also with its context with the other neighbouring properties, all of very traditional rural character. The image here shows superimposed the profile of the proposed extension. It's also worth recounting the planning history with this site. I was originally granted permission for conversion from a barn to a dwelling in 1999. 2006, there you can see the red boxes, 2 single-storey extensions were permitted. And then subsequently in 2007, an extension to raise the roof of the barn was granted at that time, which has seen overall an increase of approximately 20% of the original barn. The application has been amended since it was originally submitted to us for this application. You can see the changes there just summarised on screen. The main change being the ridge height lowering of the extension, the link element reduced, there have been changes to the fenestration as well. So the current scheme that's before you today, members, is on screen now. So it's a two-storey extension to the barn conversion. That's the floor plans. So in terms of the material considerations, it's policy H4 of the LDP that relates to the conversion and rehabilitation of a building in the open countryside for residential use. And it states that the same criteria will then be applied to proposals to extend buildings that have already been converted. And of particular relevance within policy H4 is criterion F, which sets out that only very modest extensions will be allowed. The barn has already been subject to an increase of around 20% in volume since its original conversion in 1999. The proposal now before us would see this increase to approximately 80%. Officers are clear in their view that the barn has already been subject to the very modest extension as allowed by the policy, and the proposal now would significantly increase the size of the barn and is contrary in principle to the requirements of policy H4. In terms of design, notwithstanding the previously approved and implemented extensions, the existing barn is traditional and simple in form and retains much of its original character. The proposal would introduce a double roof with a central valley to the simple linear barn and is considered to be incongruous and a very harmful form of development. Furthermore, it will also screen much of the western elevation of the traditional barn. And finally, some of the fenestration patterns and the single-storey flat roof element further erode the character of the original building. And officers are of the view that these would be contrary to policy DES 1F, as well as criterion A of policy H4. And therefore, the application is presented to members today with a recommendation for refusal for the following two reasons. First, the cumulative impact of the proposed extension, together with the previously approved extensions, are not considered to be very modest and would cause unacceptable harm to the traditional character of the original barn and would result in a development which is out of keeping with its rural setting. Proposal is therefore contrary to criterion F of policy H4 of the Monmouthshire LDP. And then the second, finally, is the resultant bulk, form and appearance of the proposed extension would be incongruous to the traditional form of the original barn, harming the appearance of the building, contrary to criterion A of policy H4 and criteria C and F of policy DES 1. And that's our officer recommendation to you today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Andrew. As you were just saying with the first application, the local member speaks first, but seeing that we have got the agent who is going to submit a video, maybe it's more prudent to have the video first. I don't know if you had a feeling on that. What about the local member? How do you feel about that, Councillor Murphy?
Quite happy for the video first, Chair.
Right, thank you. So if I believe it's a Mr. Phil Williams, if he could state his name and then we can see the video.
2 moments, Chair. Just going to get the video up.
Thank you.
Can members see that?
Yes, I have got a gentleman on the screen.
Apologies, just going to come up again. Can all members see the gentleman on the screen?
Yes. All members okay?
Yeah.
Chair, I'll just press play.
My name is Phil Williams and I'm the planning consultant acting as agent in this case. Thank you for the opportunity to express my views today. The proposed scheme has been amended to reduce the volume percentage increase following discussions with planning officers to, in my view, an acceptable degree. Planning officers have indicated that the percentage increase threshold as identified in the SPG has been exceeded. The SPG states that, quote, an increase of more than 50% in the volume of a rural dwelling would not normally be considered to comply with policy H6, unquote. Policy H6 requires extensions to be subordinate to the existing building and respect its existing form, including the pattern and shape of openings and materials. That said, the SPG on replacement dwellings and extensions to dwellings in the countryside refers in paragraph 2.7 to it being, quote, not relevant to proposed extensions to dwellings that have been converted from other buildings, such as barns. Such proposals would be subject to policy H4 of the LDP, the criteria of which would be subject to buildings that have already been converted. This is precisely the case in front of members today. As an example of policy interpretation, your council granted planning consent for a 70% volumetric increase for a two-storey extension of a domestic dwelling, a former derelict farmhouse, under code reference DC 2016/01283 at Coed Poeth in Penarheol. That officer report concluded that, quote, there is no harmful intrusive impact on the landscape, unquote, which I believe is the case at Rear Barn. The application site comprises a large plot in which a modest dwelling is located. The dwelling is limited in its scale to accommodate sufficient space for family needs and an extension, which represents the form, bulk and design of the current building, and is used sympathetic materials and complementary roof form in its design. The application site is not in open countryside, but forms an integral part of the hamlet with residential properties on both sides. Within 100 metres of the site is a large agricultural and commercial building that significantly impacts on the local landscape. The application site has a large curtilage capable of accommodating the proposed extension and allows for retention of an extensive garden, private garden and off-street parking facilities. The application has also attracted local support in the form of a formal response from Gwent Community Council, which recommends approval, and 5 letters of support from local residents. This demonstrates the acceptability of the proposal at the local level. The key issue for members of Planning Committee today is to ensure that LDP policies are used in an objective and flexible way, recognising that each application should be determined on its merits and having regard to the development plan and all other material considerations. The committee should in this case recognise that there is no material harm to the landscape within which the proposal is located, and the grant of a planning consent does not prejudice its local development plan policy framework. There would be no harmful intrusive impact on the landscape, as was concluded in the Coed Poeth case. There are no material planning considerations that would warrant a refusal of planning consent. As a consequence, the Planning Committee is respectfully invited to grant planning permission for a sensitively designed scheme which is supported by the local community and provides much needed additional accommodation space for a local family to remain in the locality. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed. I will now ask Councillor Murphy if he wishes to comment now as he's the local member.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I had a call from the agent some time ago, and we discussed this, and I must stress that at no stage in that conversation did the agent put me in a position to express an interest. But what I did agree to do was to ask for it to go to committee so that he could put his point of view, a point of view that I share. And as he said, the Community Council and locals also share. This is a large plot. It's on a lane that has some very large properties. 2 properties up, the Glen was an old traditional cottage, albeit that it had a tree growing out of it. And we allowed that to be taken away and a very substantial property put there. So the plot will take it. The street scene, such as it is, will take it. I appreciate that it appears to be against policy, But in my opinion, this is one of those that could be an exception because of what it is and where it is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Giles Howard, I believe you wish to comment. Afternoon, Giles. Welcome.
Afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Yes, here eventually. Not doing very well with IT today, am I? And I managed to turn off my other computer inadvertently as well. That had all the agenda and reports and plans up on there. So yeah, back to normal now. I understand where Phil's coming from, and I share some of the events and his views. And listening to the agent's comments, I appreciate some of that. Although, as far as I'm aware, the site is outside of the settlement boundary and therefore technically is in the countryside. I'm not familiar with the application to which he refers, but I'm sure as a former head of planning himself, he realises that what happened in another application somewhere else isn't material to this one. The concern I have then, policy H4 in particular, is that it's an established policy. Many of us who sit on the committee now discussed and approved that as part of the adoption of the LDP, and I suppose it's maybe a lack of fairness in that other applications may have been determined against H4 and not permitted, but the fact that it's been raised just concerns me a little bit then, in the fact that the policy is there. We need to be consistent, and okay, there may be other cases where there's been a deviation, albeit warranted, but I'm more inclined to go with the officers on this. So I'm interested to know what other members have to say. But the policy is really clear to me, and I think to be consistent, we ought to. Well, it's likely we ought to follow it. So that's all I wanted to add on this one, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Roger Harris next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Giles has just raised exactly what I want to raise. We have policy H4, and we have been reasonable on this barn conversion in the first place, and allowed quite a bit of additional space to be bolted on, if you like. Now we're talking to give approval of almost doubling the size. Is going to drive an absolute coach and horses through policy H4, and the officers obviously are really concerned about this, which is hence a reason for refusal. I would agree with the officers on this one, and if we as a committee agree to that, then the applicants will have an opportunity to appeal the decision, and if that's the case, it'd be interesting to see what the outcome would be. But I cannot possibly vote other than along the way the officers have presented the report, i.e. vote to refuse this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I also fully agree with that. If I'm going to comment now, as far as a farmhouse, as the agent commented in the countryside, what is done with the farmhouse is technically very different to a stone barn, and we've always agreed a very modest extension to make it habitable as to how people wish to live today, but this is going way beyond that, and so I fully agree with the recommendations as well of what the officers have said. Anyone else now wishing to comment, please? Otherwise, I think Councillor Murphy can sum up again as a local member. No one else wishes to comment? Councillor Murphy?
Just put it to the vote, Chair.
Right. It is, you wish for approval though, Councillor Murphy?
Yes, I do.
And
if you want to take the vote on that, as long as I've got a seconder.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Councillor Evans is seconded. Could I have, you've both voted now for approval, correct? So could I have a vote then, as I haven't got it in the chat bar? I think we have to be careful as to whether we agree as far as the application is for recommendation. Do we approve the application for a refusal, or we actually voting for approval or against it? It looks now,
I second the application
to
for
be
approval.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is against the recommendation of the officers. So
Yeah, I think if those who are against the recommendation vote for approval, that will sort it out, won't it? So we're approving the application, not the officer's recommendation.
exactly. So
sorry, Chair, to intervene. I think this is very confusing. So if you wanted to follow the recommendation, how would you vote? And if you don't want to, if you want to follow the officer's recommendation to refuse, how do you vote on this? Or if you want to go against the officer's recommendation, how do you vote? Because this poll that's come up is very confusing, and we need to know which way. So would it be better if we actually put up another vote to actually say this is if you're voting for approval of the application, and then yes, no, abstain, as opposed to what's up now at the moment, because it's totally confusing. Thank you.
Well, the thing is, we have got for approval, which is what Councillor Murphy has moved, or it's against approval. So it looks as though that people have made up their mind that they're against approval. Correct? Is that okay with you, Denzel?
Yes, so we've got a motion to approve the application, which has been seconded. So if you are voting for approval in this poll, then you're in favour of the application being approved.
Yes.
If you're voting against approval in this poll, then you're voting with the officer's recommendation. At the moment, we've had 11 responses. 7 are against refusal, 3 are for approval. Sorry, 3 are for approval, 7 are against approval, and 1 has abstained. So now that we've clarified what the poll is for, if I give everyone maybe a minute to reconsider how they voted, just in case there's any misunderstandings.
Thank you, Denzel. Not everybody has voted, I gather.
No, there's 3 yet to vote. I think we're 14 today.
Chairman, it's not on my chat bar yet. You hear, Ruth?
Have you got it now?
No, I'm still on the previous application.
Can you scroll it up and see if it comes up?
Chair, can we have a verbal vote on this one, seeing as there's only 7 against and there's 14 of us all together? Maybe we should state categorically what we want.
I will ask the officers if they're happy with that, because obviously John, I believe, will have to call out, or another officer.
I think we've had
Chair,
we've now had 12.
Gone up to 8 now.
Yeah, we've now had 12 votes. So there's 2 people who have still yet to vote, but there's 3 for approval, 8 against approval, and 1 abstention. So as we've now clarified what the vote was for, and everyone's had an opportunity to change their vote if they wanted to on the poll, and nobody, it seems, has chosen to do that, I think we're quite clearly here the motion is against approval. Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't think that there's any need to take a further vote.
Right, thank you, Denzel, for your advice on that. We can now take that as it is not going to be approved. So now we'll go to the next application. This is application 3 this afternoon, and this is 00616 Landfoist Abergavenny. And I believe, Andrew, again, you're presenting this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is myself again.
Yes, that's right.
Once again, apologies. You're going to have to get a quick sweep through the presentation. Won't be a moment. Yeah, I get to apologise again, members.
We've got all this technology, but at least we're progressing with planning applications anyway.
I think it is the next one after. There we go. Yes, so thank you, Chair, and apologies, members, for the delay there. So this site is located within the village of Landfoist and within a modern housing development, and the application is presented to committee today at the request of the local member, County Councillor Giles Howard. Members will recall this site, previous planning application DC 2018-00218, which was for the retention of timber close boarded fence on south boundary and raised level of number 21's garden level between 120 and 810 mil over the fence length. And this was refused by planning committee in March of this year for the following single reason. Insufficient information has been provided to demonstrate that the harmful effect on neighbour amenity from surface water as a result of the changes to the garden level have been mitigated. The development is therefore contrary to policies DES 1D, EP1 and SD4 of the adopted Monmouthshire Local Development Plan. So permission is now sought for the retention and lowering of the close boarded timber fence already erected and a reduction of the rear garden level by 300 millimetres. This level was previously raised between 120 and 810 mil, as stated, across the length of the garden. The garden fence erected along the southern boundary would be reduced from 1.65 metres to 1.37 metres with 430 mil max of trellis installed on top, and a new railway sleeper raised bed would be installed where the lowered garden meets the fence. And members will have been to this site previously. This is the view from the neighbours to the south's property. You can see the fence there above their existing garden fence, and that's a further view then looking almost sort of northwesterly from the neighbouring property to the south. That's the site there. You can see the garden of the boundary along the southern boundary. So this is the fence as it's to be reduced to, with a trellis along the top. I'll just go back. So you can see there, members, in the sort of top right-hand corner where it's shown that the garden level being reduced 300 mil with the sleeper bank. So in terms of material considerations now for this current application, in terms firstly of visual impact, the works that have been undertaken are largely only visible from within the application site, and particularly from neighbouring properties number 19 and number 20 Jasper Tudor Crescent. The previous reason for refusal of application DC 2018-00218 did not relate to visual impact, and therefore, with regard to this material consideration, the development is considered in accordance with the criteria set out in policy DES 1 of the LDP. In terms of residential amenity impact, and first to number 19, the reduction in height of the fence and the introduction of trellis above would alleviate the overbearing impact of the solid wooden fence, but would also allow for light to go through the trellis and at the same time still give acceptable privacies to both parties. In respect of number 20, the proposed reduction in ground level and the introduction of trellis along the western boundary would also mitigate privacy issues in respect of number 20, which is situated to the west. In terms then of drainage, as members are aware, as part of the previous application, the Council's flood risk management team were engaged with fully for professional advice on drainage matters. This included a number of site meetings and it was determined that the unauthorised works to the rear garden levels in number 21 could have led to the wet conditions affecting the garden of number 19 Jasper Tudor Crescent. But the advice from the flood team was that it was impossible to be certain. It did advise that there was a potential mechanism, though, for the works to be causing a problem or to exacerbate an existing problem. Members may recall from the previous application that a drainage solution was installed in late 2019, discharging into the surface water drainage system of number 19. However, it's understood now that the removal of all items installed at number 19 are subject to separate proceedings outside the planning process, and on this basis that drainage solution can no longer be considered. And whilst it's acknowledged that the reduction of the ground levels proposed across the entire rear garden by 300 millimetres would not revert the ground back to its original uneven topography, officers are of the view that the reduction in ground is materially different to that previously refused by Planning Committee and brings the proposal closer to what the original levels would have been. With regards to number 20, the changes to the ground level have resulted in earth being moved up against the garage wall of number 20 along its eastern boundary, and it's accepted that as the levels in situ, this could provide a long-term problem with respect to damp and the garage number 20. Therefore, the proposed reduction of the levels by 300 mil would significantly improve the situation, and a condition, as you'll see in the report, would require additional measures, including tanking, to be installed and safeguard the issues of damp and water ingress in respect of the garage in question. Therefore, subject to the conditions detailed in the officer's report, the application is presented to members this afternoon with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I believe this is Councillor Howard's ward.
Thanks, Chair. I thought the applicant, the objector, submitted a statement to be read out. I was sent a copy of it.
Yes, do you wish for that before you comment?
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, yes, I think it's probably better if that goes first. Thanks, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Howard. I believe that a planning officer is to read it out.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Craig. I'll leave you to read it out then to the committee. Thank you.
Just as means of introduction to the public, I'm Craig O'Connor, Head of Planning here in Monmouthshire. This is a statement from the third party objecting to the planning application. I write again in sheer frustration at the length of time this unauthorised building works has been allowed to remain. I cannot express how distressing it has been to be unable to obtain a resolution to this matter. When I first contacted the local authority, I had expected that regulations relating to this matter would be stringently upheld. I have been dismayed to find this is not the case. I have now had to employ a civil litigation solicitor at extensive cost to pursue this matter. This is out of respect to my tenant, a consultant doctor at Neville Hall, who has been left with the consequences of the applicant's actions. Her residential amenity destroyed for 3 years and putting a blight on my property. I should not have needed to employ a solicitor. The regulations on this matter are clear, and I feel solely let down by the planning department. Clearly, I was naive in the belief that the regulations were in place to prevent others doing harm to another person's property. This latest application doesn't change anything. It improves nothing from the previous one. Dropping the soil by 300 millimetres on the applicant's side leaves us with the same issues and the same regulations breached, which I have explained in detail in my objection letter. For example, point number 1, fence height. This application, again, is merely replacing part of the height with a trellis. Point number 2, land raising. The reduction of the earth level by 300 millimetres on the applicant's side will do nothing to alleviate the damage that was caused and continues to cause on our side of the wall. It merely reduces the level of earth their side. Point number 3, misinformation by the architect. The applicant did not put in the drainage system drawn on the plans agreed. Miss Hunt is incorrect in her comment on the applicant's letter dated the 25th of June 2020. A pipe was put in their side, but not the length of our side to prevent the pooling of water, failing to mitigate the harm being caused to my property. Point number 4, drainage outlet. The current pipe drains into our garden storm drain, which the applicant does not have permission to do. The applicant has failed to indicate where they are now intended to drain. Point number 5, maintenance of the original fence. The new fence has been attached to the original fence. This does not allow any maintenance work to be carried out. This has not been addressed. Point number 6, raised sleeper bed. Should this new ground level be given approval and the fence reduced with trellis, there would still be a privacy issue. Replacing earth with a raised sleeper bed does not remove this problem. Any land raising consent causes overlooking and a breach of our privacy. In conclusion, I implore the committee to reject this application once again and finally pursue enforcement to have the land put back to its original level. Allowing such works to remain would open the floodgates for the public to do what they want on new build estates and make a new mockery of the current building regulations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. Now I will take comments from you, Councillor Howard.
Thanks again, Chair. Just a question regarding the proposed condition 6 for the scheme alongside number 20. I just wonder if it could be extended to the boundary with number 19, so that the issues that the objectors referred to could at least be addressed or seem to be addressed. I mean, in general, I've got concerns with the application still, and I think the objectors made those clear in her letter. I mean, the first of those is that the land would still, looking at the submitted plans there, closest to the house, it would still be half a metre higher than the original lawn level, on top of which then there'd be the raised sleeper bed, which is 300 mil high. So that in effect, that means from the top of the sleeper bed, the fence would only be to a height of 1.3 metres. So we're just coming up to, I suppose, the level of most people's chests. So yeah, even though you've got the trellis there, the raised bed provides a step. And if it was my property, I wouldn't be happy about that. I think the objectors raised issues with the drainage. I mean, when this came back in with the amendments, given that committee had debated it, that the objector and applicant were present and some consideration had been given, I thought it was only fair that it had a hearing in front of committee again. But I say I'm not convinced. And I just wish that the land closest to the boundary had been withdrawn to the original level, even if the scheme for the rest of the garden to be raised so that they could enjoy a flat surface was retained. But I'd be interested to hear the views of other members. But if the officers could give a comment on condition 6 and applying that to this boundary as well, I'd appreciate that, please.
Thank you for that, Giles. Do you wish to comment on what Giles has commented on, Craig, or shall I just go to committee?
I could take questions from other members, and then we'll come back and answer the questions, queries. Right. Okay.
Right, thank you, Craig. Right, Jim Higginson, you've appeared somewhere. No, Tony Eason, please. Councillor Eason, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't support this application. This work was done without any planning permission or any planning guidance in 2017. It's created an eyesore for the next door neighbour. It's created drainage problems for the next door neighbour, and it's probably reduced the value of the property if it's up for resale. I feel that, having rejected this at the last planning committee meeting, the person who done all this work should restore it to its original position, because these housing estates are built these days without the ability to do wholesale garden redevelopments. And I have got experience of one property in Caldecott as exactly the same, where it's created an eyesore, the drainage problems are there, and I think planning authority should be very careful when allowing people to raise their gardens in such close proximities to other properties. If it's in the middle of the countryside, it might be different. So I can't support this on the basis that this created an eyesore. It's done without permission to start with, and it does affect the neighbouring properties immensely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eason, for your comments. Councillor Brown next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the comment I would make is just looking at the report. It says about reducing it 300, and then in 1.1 of the report it says that in various places it goes up to originally up to 810. So I don't understand why this is helping to put it back into the position it was before. You know, in other words, in view of what Councillor Eason has said, it's not actually asking it to be restored to the original levels that it was before this was done on an unauthorised basis. So that's really just a question as to why the levels aren't more towards the same original levels, really.
Right, thank you, Councillor Brown. Anybody else wish to comment? Otherwise, we'll go back to you then, Craig, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to provide some guidance and some clarity really on some of the points that have been made. With regards to drainage with the application, this is the reason why Planning Committee did decide to refuse the application last time, based on insufficient information relating to drainage. Our drainage colleagues have been in consultation on the application for this one and the previous application, and there is no evidence to suggest that this development has worsened the current situation with regards to drainage on the site. So as officers, we can't see a reason to refuse the planning application based on drainage. There's no evidence to suggest this development has caused any drainage issues on the site. Notwithstanding that, officers and members did agree last time to refuse the application based on insufficient information with regards to drainage. So that was a clear reason for a refusal given the last planning application. I know that some comments have been made with regards to privacy and the overbearing impact of the fence. However, this was not considered to be a reason for refusal last time, and so I would ask members to consider whether they do feel that is if that fence does have an adverse impact, given the fact that that wasn't a reason for refusal on the last planning application. So I think members need to make a decision with regards to that. With regards to the 300 millimetres, this is a reduction in the site from the previous planning application. So where the land is now is 300 millimetres lower than that. And that would vary then across the site, obviously, but it's 300 millimetres across the board from where the land is now, just to clarify that. But I think members need to give some serious weight with regards to whether they agree with the officer's recommendation to approve. If members are still concerned with regards to the information with relation to drainage, then obviously that is a matter for yourselves as well. But I think in terms of clarity, that I think just to clarify those points for you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Councillor Murphy, you wish to comment, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And yeah, picking up from that last point of Craig's, when we went to site, or whenever it was, ages ago, I know I was particularly worried about the damp on that garage next door. I could see why the site had been levelled. I think the site was badly dealt with by the builder. It should never have been a slope like that in the way it was. So I entirely understand why the householder wanted to level it up. But the reduction in the level, the tanking that's proposed, the fact that the drainage officers have been there and have come up with this solution, I think gets to the stage where it probably is making the best out of a bad job, but that's not quite the way I would wish to put it. I think we have got a potential solution now, which is acceptable, so I should be supporting the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Any more comments? Councillor Giles Howard, do you wish to move?
No, just happy for it to be put to committee and see what the outcome is, Chair. I'm still not convinced why it's appropriate to deal with one boundary with the drainage condition and not the other. So I'm really not happy with that. But I'll leave it up to members to make a decision. Thank you.
Right. So does anybody wish to move?
I move approval, Chair.
Right. Do you have a seconder for approval, Councillor Murphy?
I'll second it.
Councillor Maureen Powell has seconded the proposal to approve the application. So could you please go to the chat bar? Denzel?
We're at, there's 12 responses and we've got 14 in attendance. 2 haven't voted. There are 6 for, 6 against. So I think we need to move to a individual member vote, if that's all right, Chair.
Right, thank you.
Chair, are you happy for me to call the names out for?
Yes, please, Richard.
Okay.
Yes, please, Richard.
Okay, if we could start with Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Dovey. Councillor Dovey. Shall we move on, Chair, to the next person?
Yes.
Councillor Eason. Councillor Eason.
No, move on.
Sorry, against.
Okay, Councillor Eason against. Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Higginson.
For.
Councillor Howard.
Against.
Councillor Murphy.
For.
Councillor Powell.
For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
Councillor Woodhouse.
Against.
And I'll go back to Councillor Dovey. Are you there, Councillor Dovey?
He's in the building across the corridor, I believe, Richard.
Shall I go and ask him?
Yes, I think that would be a wise thing to do.
Councillor Dovey is against, Chairman.
Thank you. Denzel?
Okay, so I make that 7 votes for and 6 votes against. I was mistaken. There's 13 in attendance, so that motion is passed.
Right, thank you, Denzel. We now go on to the next application, which my papers are all skew with here. Sorry. The next application, this now is in Mega. I believe this is you this time, Phil, if you want to introduce yourself. 02082 in the park.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Philip Thomas. I'll be presenting the next 3 applications, actually, and I'm Development Services Manager with Monmouthshire County Council. So I share the presentation for the next item, which is at Gwent Euro Park. Bear with me. Just trying to find the yeah, it's not coming up as an option. Where is it? Strange. Oh, it's down here. Sorry, Chair. Just opening it now. Can you see that?
Yes, but it's rather small. That's better.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So this is the application for Gwent Euro Park. What this is, it's the proposal to vary condition 9 of a previous planning permission, M8467, which was in itself a renewal of the outline permission, the original permission for Gwent Euro Park. And they now want to include B1, which is light industry and office uses, and B2 general industry uses, as well as the already permitted B8 distribution uses, so that they can market the site, given its failure to come forward for B8 in the past. So we just run through these slides so you can see where we are. This is a view of the site as it says in the slide from the roundabout approach road off the A4810 that leads into the Euro Park.
And there's a series of little large roundabouts actually, given the lorry sizes. So that's the site in the distance, and the immediate area is actually in Newport. So the far end of the site in the distance is the part that's in Monmouthshire, and that turbine on the right hand side belongs to the Tesco distribution centre. And that's looking more towards the mid part of the site, again taken from the west, from the distribution road. And again, the site in the immediate area is in Newport Council's area, and ours is in the far distance, and that's the Tesco turbine you can see again there. And then this is the top end of the site as you're getting towards the Wilkinson warehouse. There's a big Wilkinson depot over to the left, just out of the photo, and that's some of where the wagons unload and park up to the north end of the site. So again, immediate area, Newport, far distance in Monmouthshire, and that's Will Crick Hill you can see in the distance near the brewery, that mound in that far distant part of the shot. And then this is from the east, from the lane leading to Llandafeni, and the site itself is quite a way on from that in the distance. You can see there's intervening vegetation between Llandafeni and the site, and the site begins a couple of 100 meters on from where this shot is taken. And that shows the actual allocation in the LDP, which is for B8 employment uses. It's that area which the arrow points to there, literally. And then that's the site in context. So you can see some of those white blobs in the picture there are the Wilkinsons and Tesco distribution centres. And this site is sort of north of Tesco's and east of Wilkinson's. And that's the overall site. Can remember see my cursor on the screen there?
Yes.
Yeah. The actual part of in Monmouthshire is this area on the eastern side. The rest of it is all in Newport. And look what else we've got. And that was the last approved layout for the site back in 2007, which was for a large distribution warehouse that I think Argos were going to take up originally, but that never came to fruition. They did start the development in terms of forming the access to the site, so and all the conditions were discharged, so that actually is an extant permission and can be built in its current form. So that again puts the site in its context of what can be done on this particular site. So the site is allocated for B8 use in the adopted LDP, and it has been in successive development plans since the original outline approval back in 1995 for the Gwent Europark. The vast majority of the site, as we've seen, is in Newport's administrative area, and there are two major warehouses built on the site in Newport's area, including Tesco's and Wilkinson's. The current site is east of Wilkinson's and north of Tesco's, and was subject to an implemented but not completed B8 planning permission, the reserve matters approval of which was made under DC 2007-00835. So I go back to the overall site plan there, so you can see that. All the pre-commencement conditions, as I said, were discharged and a meaningful start on site was made. So that permission is extant, that reserve matters permission. The site has been marketed for B8 purposes since that permission without success. So there is a desire within the current Section 73 application to widen the scope of uses to realise a development on the site. This would see the approved building under the reserve matters being potentially used for primary B1 or B2 uses, as well as potentially the B8 use being an option for the site. This proposal has been assessed against potential impacts of B1 and B2 uses in relation to noise, that's for B2 use, and traffic for both possible uses. As regards noise, a noise assessment was carried out, and in the light of the analysis of this, the Council's environmental health officers have recommended appropriate conditions to prevent harm to properties in the hamlet of Llandafeni, which is to the northeast of the site. As regards traffic, although the approved layout does feature 591 car parking spaces and extensive areas for lorry parking and manoeuvring, technically this would not meet the parking guidelines for B8 uses, and indeed not for B1 or B2 either. These standards are, however, maximum standards, and in the light of Planning Policy Wales 10, which is much more up to date in relation to Welsh Government policy on parking and travel policy in general, the standard of parking proposed is considered acceptable. PPW 10 favours more sustainable modes of transport, and so a travel plan is recommended to be conditioned to help encourage more sustainable modes of travel to the site, via, for instance, cycling, public transport, and car sharing for any future employees accessing the site. So subject to the revised list of conditions that we set out in late correspondence to tie the proposal in with the approved outline and reserve matters consents, we would recommend approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. The local member to this application site is not a member of the committee. I'm just trying to think who is the next adjoining ward. Is it Councillor David Evans?
Francis Taylor or Lisa?
Or neither on the committee, so I'm asking, is there another local member to that ward?
No, it's David Evans is the nearest if there's no one else.
Do you wish to comment first of all, Councillor Evans? No, I'll carry on then. Is anybody else in the committee then wishing to comment?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. By that I mean a problem with it. I'm prepared to accept what the officers are putting forward and for approval.
I'll second that, Chair. I'll second that.
Right, it's been moved approval from Councillor Higginson and seconded by Councillor Tony Eason. No more comments at all on it. So would you like?
Sorry, I did raise my hand.
Oh, I can see it now.
Madam Chair, I did propose we accept the application.
Right, thank you, Councillor Evans. I now have noticed that Councillor Brown has raised her hand, so we'll take her comments before we go to the vote. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you. I was just looking at condition 15, and basically it mentions. Oh no, sorry, condition 14, which is about the noise levels, and I just wondered whether any consideration had been given to vehicles accessing the site that weren't internal to the site, and whether any time periods should be considered as well, because obviously you've got you might have delivery vehicles going to the site itself, and I think that but basically there is a condition, I can't find it now, from Environmental Health, which talks about it being just internal to basically the use has to be on an internal basis. I think, sorry, I've just found my note on it. It says, what about delivery vehicles noise and making sure operates at a reasonable hour, and also any biodiversity off-site compensation in view of the recent letter to Chief Planning Officers from the Welsh Government on a net biodiversity balance in view of its SSSI status. So those were just a couple of questions. Sorry, I couldn't get immediately to my sticky note on the.
Right, Councillor Brown. I'll ask Officer Phil Thomas if he wishes to comment on that, please, Phil.
Yeah, in terms of noise from vehicles outside, it's got to be remembered that there's an egg stamp B8 use for the site, which would have had it was a distribution use. So you'd have had heavy lorries using the external parts of the site at all times, 24 hours. So obviously we've got to recognise that was the case as a fallback position, and this is seeking only to vary the range of uses at the site. The actual building itself has been granted and started, so we're looking at this in a fairly narrow sense, really. There is a travel plan that will limit the that we can use to look at the ways that the employees get to the site. But it, as I say, the fallback position was 24/7 use of the site for B8 purposes. You imagine distribution uses do go through the night.
Yeah.
And the same has to be said for the Wilkinson's development and Tesco's as well, which operate in the same manner. And it's also so I think what we're saying, it would be pretty difficult to actually tie in and restrict external uses when it's already got a permitted use for B8, which could have in fact more lorry movements associated with it than a B1 or B2 use. And in terms of biodiversity net gain, this is literally an application to vary a condition that for a use and development, a development rather, that has actually been permitted and started. So it's a different form of application than one where we would be naturally looking for a biodiversity net gain. It's a more narrow, if you like, type of application where they're only looking to widen the range of uses that can use that permitted building that has already been approved and started. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I was just thinking about as it was mentioning noise levels, you know, about obviously delivery vehicles are noise levels as well, but I think what you've said is fair enough.
Yeah, I think certainly any industrial process could only be operated inside the building, and that's what I think environmental health concern was, because you could have noisy industrial machinery, and that must only operate in terms of the interior of the building, not outside.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Councillor Brown. I believe it's been moved for approval. I'm not sure if it was Jim Higginson, Councillor Higginson.
Yes, Chairman, it was me.
Oh, myself, Chair.
And then Councillor Eason, and also I believe.
I got my hand up, Chair, but I don't wish to comment. Phil has said it all.
Right, thank you very much indeed. So we'll go to the vote then, please.
Oh, where did I can't get it?
Yeah, we all have a problem, don't we?
Yeah.
Please make sure your microphones are all switched off now.
So we have now 11 responses. All are for. There are no against and no abstentions. So I think there's 2 members yet to vote, but in any event, that motion is clearly passed.
Right, thank you for that, Denzel. So that is carried. So now we go on to the 5th application of the afternoon, and it's 00727, and it's the Unit 1 New Barn Workshops at St. Arvan's. Thank you. I believe this is back to Andrew, or is it Phil? Thank you.
You're on mute, Phil.
Phil?
Sorry. Switch it back on and off. Now can you hear me?
Yes, it does take a while. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Yeah, this application is a site that I'm sure certainly some of the more established members will recall very well. It's a site northeast of St. Arvan's, and it's occupied by some stone workshop buildings. Yeah, so it's made up of land and buildings forming part of New Barn Workshops off the A466 to the north of St. Arvan's. The site is 0.46 hectares. It's irregular in shape and is positioned to the southeast of Mistletoe Cottage, which is that property there near the road, and a cattery, which is to the north of Mistletoe Cottage. It lies, and there's also some stable buildings which abut the site, which belong in the curtilage of Mistletoe Cottage. It lies to the east of the main road and west of Piercefield Park, which comprises Chepstow Racecourse and grounds, and is in the AOMB, of course. The proposal is to demolish the workshop buildings and build 2 detached houses Sorry, that shows the Cadw Park boundary. That's a registered park and garden within the yellow area, so just to the east of the site and south of the site. And then there's a scheduled monument much further over to the east. That's looking at an aerial shot of the site. This is the property, Mistletoe Cottage. Those are the stables attached to Mistletoe Cottage or Horsewalker. These are the barn workshops with a forecourt in front and associated hard standings all around there. The main road is the A466 here with access in this area here. So the proposal to demolish the workshop buildings and build 2 detached houses with detached garages on the site and alter the existing access, provide a reed bed for foul drainage and wildlife mitigation in the form of a bat building, as well as landscaping of the site. The houses, as you can see from the plan, there would be T-shaped in design, measuring at their greatest 12.6 metres wide, 16.3 metres deep, with a ridge height of 7.1 metres falling to 5.2 metres at eaves level. And internally, the dwellings would provide 4 bedrooms, and externally, the dwellings would be finished with a natural slate roof, through coloured rendered elevations with natural stone and horizontal timber-clad detailing, anthracite grey colour-coated aluminium frame windows and doors with specialist glass to reduce glare, and anthracite grey coloured aluminium rainwater goods. That's the floor plans. Those are the detached garages. And each one would have a garden shed and store. And that's the proposed bat mitigation house to the south of the site of the dwellings, that is. And then just running through, that's Mistletoe Cottage on the left-hand side. The application site is behind the trees there, with the access in the far distance there. And the A46 runs down towards the village of St Arvans. That's the access onto the A466. And that's looking, first shot on the left is looking south towards St Arvans, and then the north towards Mistletoe Cottage. And then that's an internal view as it explains from the access towards a registered parking garden in the distance. And there's an internal arrangement there with walls and industrial type gates. And then that's the site alongside, which is starting to revegetate. Was an unauthorised use for a builder's merchants at one stage on the left-hand side, builder's storage area rather. And then that just shows the sort of ancillary areas that have been used for storage over the years in association with the buildings. And then that's long views, Mistletoe Cottage, views from Piercefield Park, and a view of the site from the recreation ground to the south in St Arvans. And then there's the site inside Piercefield Registered Park. And those are the key considerations which I'll leave on there for the moment. So the landscaping plan submitted detailed the removal of a bank of conifers on the northern side of the internal access road and the removal of ash saplings and Japanese knotweed in the northwestern part of the site adjacent to the main road. And the area would be replanted with a mix of native woodland trees. The site, the subject of the current application, has an extensive and contentious planning history and has previously been the subject of a non-conforming B2 use in the countryside, which, as said, is in the AONB. The last approved consent for the site was for a proposed change of use to the storage and repair of light motor vehicles, the storage and repair of up to 2 HGV motor vehicles and a trailer and a retention of ancillary parking areas. If approved, this development would provide new residential development in an area of open countryside within the AONB. And while this is contrary to housing settlement policy in the LDP, on balance, however, given the close position of the site to the development boundary of St Arvans, its existing pedestrian links with the facilities within St Arvans, which include local shop, public house, nursery, community hall and sports field, the positioning and transport links to Chepstow, which itself benefits from further amenities and wider transport connections, the small scale of the development relative to the site area, that has previously benefited from consent for an industrial type use, and the advantages the redevelopment of a brownfield site would have, it's considered that the proposal can be considered an appropriate exception as a result of the betterment that would arise to local amenity. In addition, there would be a marked improvement to the nationally important landscape, the setting of the registered park and garden and racecourse as a result of the removal of a historically non-compliant discordant use relative to its setting. Although the dwellings and outbuilds proposed are relatively large, they're considered proportionate to the overall scale of the plot, with the plans detailing a design, mass, height, external material, alignment, access, layout and landscaping that would be complementary to the area. The properties have been designed to be as low profile as possible, with a reduced finished floor level relative to Mistletoe Cottage to the north and the A466 to the west. The dwellings would benefit from a sufficient and proportionate area of amenity space, new soft landscaping, green infrastructure to help offset the dwellings and prevent the appearance of overdevelopment. It is considered that the design of the dwellings proposed in conjunction with their staggered arrangement and density of development make the development acceptable in design terms and compliant with the requirements of policy DES1 of the LDP. Although the development would alter the use, character and visual appearance of the site and may result in the need to divert an existing footpath that runs through the site, it is considered that relative to the existing approved use of the site, the proposal would create a more neighbourly form of development, complementary to and in keeping with the adjacent residential properties and the adjacent village, and would not have a detrimental impact on the amenity of the area in compliance with policies DES1 and EP1. Although the Community Council have raised no objection to the proposal, they and an objector have expressed concern with regards to the traffic exiting the site onto the A466 and have requested some form of speed awareness be incorporated into the highway. In this instance, given the reduced volume and type of traffic that would be generated by the proposal relative to the extant use and the alterations to the access and visibility display shown as part of the application, it is considered unreasonable to request the developer to provide any further traffic calming measures along or within the carriageway. This would fail to meet the tests for a legal condition or planning obligation in this instance. Relative to the existing context, it's considered that the removal of a utilitarian industrial use and structures at the site and replacement of the dwellings proposed would create a development of a form, bulk, size, layout and scale that respects the character of the surrounding countryside. And through the use of appropriate design, materials and landscaping would enhance the landform and landscape of this particular site, which in turn would have a beneficial impact on the designations of national importance in terms of the AONB and the registered park and garden. And subject to the imposition of conditions and the applicant entering into a Section 106 agreement to provide an affordable housing contribution, this proposal, while a departure from the development plan, is considered compliant with design and landscape policies in the LDP and is recommended for approval for the unique benefits it offers in this location. And as a last note, we do recognise that there's an error in the affordable housing calculation for the within the suggested 106, and we will ensure that the amount required will comply with the adopted supplementary planning guidance. So there will be a larger housing contribution than that set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for quite a lengthy and detailed report, Phil, and I'm glad you'll address that for affordable housing. I believe Councillor Anne Webb, you're the local member. If you wish to comment first, please.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Chairman, and good afternoon to members. Well, this application has taken a year to be determined, and I hope that we now have a scheme before us which we are all able to support. Thank you. Most members, as Phil has said, have visited the site on more than one occasion, I think. We hadn't heard from the AONB officer with regard to this application, but they have since commented in late correspondence, you'll find. The exit onto the A466, as Phil has also said, the highways have now found it acceptable. There was much more use in previous activities on the site. There was a coach park, vehicle repair place, and there was lots of access and egress onto this site in the past. Our members must be aware of the CADU content in the report, which I thought was very interesting, regarding sightlines, topography, and the views from the lands at Piercefield House. I thought this report actually was really comprehensive. The NRW condition is included in the conditions relating to any possible contamination from previous activities on the site. I must really compliment Helen, which is given before us a very comprehensive and interesting report. I think she's basically covered every single aspect of this application in her report, and I thank her for this. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Giles Howard, I believe you wish to comment.
Just to support the local member, Chair, if she hasn't moved it, or if she has, I'm happy to second it. And I thought Phil's introduction was very tactful. Do we remember it? Well, I can remember it was 2012 when we last discussed this in the Shire Hall, and had anybody said to still be on the committee 8 years later, I might have taken myself off for a long swim. But yes, I agree with the contents of the report. I think it's a far better adjoining use to the properties that are there immediately to the north and further around. And I tried to think if there was any specific harm that wasn't covered in the report, and I can't see that there is. So I'm happy to support it and either move or second as appropriate. Thank you.
Can I second that, or move it, whichever you wish, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I will take that as said, unless there's anybody else wish to comment. But as Giles said, I will never, ever, ever forget the Shire Hall meeting. I am here and I can remember it. So anybody else wish to comment? If not, Councillor Webb.
Chairman, can I come in?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Clark, please.
Sorry to be harping on about the same subject. Sorry to be harping on about the same subject, but on page 20, paragraph 7, we're back to through colourcrete rendering. Now, as you all know, if we go around this county where it's being used, some of it is very poor and it doesn't last long and it becomes very discoloured very quickly. And unless our office can assure me that the product used is a good one, I would suggest we revert to a sand and cement render with a colour coating on the top. Otherwise, we shall end up with, yes, 2 more messes in our county. Thank you, Chairman.
I think that could well be addressed anyway, Councillor Clark, especially in the position that these houses will be built. So I'm sure they will keep a close eye on that. Anybody else wish to comment? Otherwise, I will take it as Councillor Webb has moved for approval, seconded by Councillor Howard, and we'll go to the vote.
So we've now had 12 responses, Chair. As I said, there's 13 in attendance today. All of those responses have been for the application, so that has been approved.
Right, thank you. That application has been carried. Thank you very much, Denzel. We now go, I believe, to the last application of the day, and Phil is presenting this as 00883, and this is at Crick, the Airport Park Wall roundabout. And I believe you're there to do that, Phil?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Get to the right commentary sheet of mine. Yeah, so quickly run through the photos. That's a reasonably recent photograph of the site. That's the A48 is to the right-hand side, just out of shot. That's some gates and wall leading into the residential caravan site the members approved back in March, I believe. And that's the driveway in front of you, leading up to it. And so that's a shot look, as you can see the road side there and the A48 running in front alongside the site. That's the utility block that's been built by the applicant to the left-hand side, which will serve the 2 park homes that were approved. The area to the right here is the parking and turning area that's been constructed in accordance with the approved drawings. yeah, so the parking turning area is immediately where this shot is taken, and then there's a sort of an area which on the approved layout plan showed a sort of play area being provided for the applicant's children. That's the parking turning area. And then that's looking back towards the access where the first shot was taken. And that's looking from the site access to the left as you emerge from the site towards Park Wall. You can see there's good visibility in that direction. And then that's looking back through towards Crick under the M48 road bridge. Site plan. And then that's the sort of approved layout plan under the discharge of conditions application for the approval of the two park homes and associated development. So I'd refer members to the late correspondence where the applicant's comments and those of his advocate were set out in support of the application that were sent round this morning, so you had time to read and digest those comments. So this application seeks to vary condition 3 of planning permission DM 2019-01480 to allow up to 4 touring caravans to be accommodated on the approved residential caravan site for use by the applicants and his son's families only, and to remove condition 4, which presently limits any occupation of the site to the applicant and his son and their respective families. In terms of the variation of condition 3, the key previous concerns of members regarding the provision up to 4 touring caravans on site was that this would be visually harmful as an overdevelopment of the site. Officers had recommended approval of the site previously and considered the limited number of touring caravans would be an acceptable element of this proposal. This remains the case, officers being mindful of the single-storey nature of the structures on site, the fluctuating levels of use and movement with regard to the touring units, the site's context with screening to the north and west, and the increased screening and mitigation that would be provided. Whilst the development and use of the site would be apparent from the A48, immediately adjacent to the southern boundary, and from the Garden of Sunnybank to the east, it is considered that the relatively low-lying position of the site and proposals relative to the rising land to the rear would help assimilate the development into the landscape when viewed from any wider public vantage points. The hedge, when planted along the site frontage, added to the existing screen fence, would mean the additional caravans would not be prominent or visually harmful. It is also considered that the development of the site would reduce pressure to develop or encroach into the wider, more fragile and undeveloped areas of the open countryside. There is ample room to position up to 4 touring caravans on site without them looking out of place or crowded. Touring caravans need not be large units and will provide the additional accommodation that is needed for privacy and cultural reasons important to gypsy and traveller families, as is set out in the report. Parking and turning space is already provided on site. Visibility at the junction with the A48 is good, and there is no objection to the proposal from highways. It is considered that the impact generated will not be so significant to the overall character and appearance of the area to warrant refusal of the application. We would therefore recommend that condition 3 be varied to accommodate up to 4 touring caravans to be kept on site for use by the applicant, his son and their respective families only. As regards condition 4, the applicant's request to omit this entirely would mean that the personal nature of the permission would be removed. This, however, would not be acceptable in national policy terms, as the condition ensures that the site is used to meet an unmet need identified within the council's gypsy and traveller accommodation assessment for the applicant's family. The site is in open countryside where no speculative residential use would be allowed under the terms of PPW 10 and the adopted LDP. The removal of the condition entirely would lead to an unfettered residential use in the open countryside, and the removal of this condition would not be acceptable as the condition provides a justification for allowing the development in the first place. It is recommended that this element of the application is not allowed, and the condition set out in the report is imposed on any subsequent permission. So we'd recommend condition 3 is varied, as discussed, but that the element of the proposal to remove condition 4 not be allowed, and the condition reworded as set out in the report on page 74 of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Phil. One comment before I ask for the local member. That concrete block wall, do they need permission for that? It looks rather intrusive in the countryside.
That was approved as part of the details under the terms of the previous permission for the 2 park homes and associated, development with that. So that's been approved.
They don't look very sympathetic to my eye when you've got such a lot of fencing boarding around, then you've got that block. Anyway, Councillor Brown, I wish to take comments from you first, please. Councillor Brown?
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
The application is to vary the original conditions, so the personal consent is removed and the 4 touring caravans are added. The officer recommendation is for a split decision for the application for the personal consent to be refused as based on policy S1 and H8 as an exception, and which normally prevents development in the open countryside, but for the 4 touring caravans to be allowed. However, nothing has changed since the original application and the decision made by the committee to keep as a personal consent and to exclude the 4 touring caravans. And I'm asking for the committee to refuse both variations and that the original committee decision to be kept. If you can see on the plan, which unfortunately is a little bit small, the original application was permission for a showers utility block and a 2 and 3 bedroom park homes. The 4 touring caravans were not included as the decision notice states it would be unjustified development. It was accepted at committee that it was an overdevelopment of the site. The site slopes, so this means that the main development area is only at the top flat plateau area. Policy H8 paragraph C states that development are of a suitable size to allow for the planned number of caravans, amenity blocks, play area, the access road, and includes sufficient space for the parking and safe circulation of all vehicles associated with occupiers within the curtilage of the site. Mathern Community Council commented that the site overall is not large enough to house the proposed 2 park homes, 2 amenity blocks, 4 traveller pitches, plus the necessary vehicle parking and circular turning areas. On that basis, we believe that the proposal represents a complete overdevelopment of the site, posing associated health and safety and visual amenity issues. In the original committee report for the same site, in paragraph 6.12, the officer commented that officers would echo concerns that the full use of the site would appear crammed. Basically, it's about the same site not being big enough or of a suitable size to accommodate everything asked for, and even today's report states that the site is modest. If you look at this slide on the amended plan, it is not clear where the 4 caravans, which are over 5 metres long each, will go. The amended plans and highways discharging the turning circle conditions were based on the site without the 4 touring caravans. You will see if you look at the site plan in the presentation that the parking area in the flat plateau area at the top has blotted out caravans on the plan, and this is the parking area for the cars, an allowance of 5 car spaces for the 2 park homes, and in line with MCC policies for up to 3 spaces per bedroom. The area for the turning circle lower down is marked out in pen at the bottom there, if you see the little blue pen arrows, and that's basically that's towards the entrance of the site, and that's because the highway condition was to cover the turning circle for a tanker to empty the cesspit, which is on the left-hand side of the plan. If the cars are parked at the top area where it's marked out with crisscross, then that leaves only the sloping down area at the bottom for the caravans, which will then 4 caravans, which will then block any turning circle for the caravans or the tanker. If alternatively, as the report suggests, the caravans are parked at the top end, which is not what the plans say, but the report mentions in paragraph 1.3, then the drive will be blocked not only for the tanker but for the caravans turning circle by the cars then parked on the slope. How will any emergency vehicles get in the site with too much on it? Also, parking either by caravans or cars on a sloping access drive will create visual amenity concerns of an overdeveloped site. If the touring caravans or the tanker tempi, the cesspit, can't come out in forward gear, then there will be long vehicles such as a caravan with a towing vehicle or a tanker reversing onto the busy A48 in a 50-60 mile zone. The A48 is the main route for Chepstow residents to get to the 5 Lanes refuge site, and also for Gwent and some parts of Caldicot residents to head towards Chepstow for the Bristol commute. This is the reason why the Community Council argued that an alternative and appropriate site needed to be found by MCC to cover gypsy and traveller site. It is simply on the basis of the size of the site being too small for all that's suggested to be put on it. We can look at the policies, but it's also based on the common sense argument that there will be too much on this modest site, which is not of a suitable size. The concern is to ensure safe access and egress from the site for the residents and to ensure safe circulation within the site and for residents using the highway. If you look at page 65 of the committee report, which unfortunately has just gone off my screen. Sorry, it's refusing to give me access to that, but I think it's the, if officers could read out the condition that's associated with this in relation to unjustified overdevelopment, because I can't get access at the moment. Could somebody else read that out, please?
Sorry, Louise, what condition is that?
It's on page 65 in relation to condition 3, which unfortunately I can't get access to the planning committee report, and it says what the condition is that's being sought to be varied on caravans, and it also says the reasons for it. So if you could, somebody could read that out, please.
Condition number 3. Condition number 3 of the report says the development hereby approved shall be limited to the installation of 2 park homes as detailed, up to 4 touring caravans to be used in association with the persons living on the site, the erection of 2 utility buildings and associated fences and gates. No additional park homes or touring caravans shall be allowed on the site. Reason for this is to limit the scope of development having regard to the...
No, you haven't got the right one. It's in the body of the report on page 65. Sorry, it's come now. I found it now. Sorry, that you're reading the conditions at the end. It's
sorry,
basically,
sorry, Councillor Brown, that's what you wanted.
I've found it now. Sorry about that. It's on page 65. It's condition 3, which says this is on the original approval. Notwithstanding the details of the approved plans, the development hereby approved shall be limited to the installation of 2 park homes as detailed and the erection of the utility buildings. No part of the application site shall be used for touring caravans. And the reason for this is that more than 2 park homes on the site would intensify the use and would constitute unjustified development relative to the identified demand for such facilities, evidenced by the 2016-220 Monmouthshire County Council Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment. The increase in development will be unacceptable with regards to the visual amenity on the character and appearance of the application site and wider area in compliance with the LDP policies S13, S17, EP1 and DES1. I would like to comment again as ward member prior to any vote following listening to the committee as is normal practice. Thank you.
Going back to that, Councillor Brown, I was reading this as you were saying just now. When it says the reason more than 2 park homes, does it just mean that there couldn't be more park homes on there?
No, I think this is basically to do, sorry, I'm going back to it. no, it says that more than 2 park homes on the site. So in other words, if you add on the caravans, it would be unjustified development, because it says no part of the application site shall be used for touring caravans on the top of that.
Right, I see what you mean. I was just thought that you couldn't have more than 2 park homes anyway, but you know, differentiating.
Well, it does say that. It basically says that you can have 2 park homes, but you can't unjustified development if there was the touring caravans on the top. I mean, it's basically due to the dimensions of the site and the fact that the top flat plateau area isn't particularly large.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Right. Anybody else wish to comment now? Councillor Anne Webb.
Oh, yes. Yes, thank you. I concur with a lot of that Councillor Brown has said regarding the size of the site and what is going to be put there. But I am a bit concerned about a septic tank being used. I don't know if this is the right place to ask about this, Craig. I would think that you would need to probably a treatment plant for this number of properties there, bearing in mind it's very near the road. And is this system going to be environmentally friendly, a septic tank or a cesspit? But perhaps this is building control matter, I don't know.
Right. Anybody wish to comment on that for Councillor Webb before I go on to other questions?
Do you want me to comment generally on all the questions, Chair, or it's up to you how you want me to?
Okay, then, Craig, I'll take all the questions first, and then you can come in at the end if that's more sense.
Well, I'm happy to clear some of that, to clarify some points that.
Right, go on then. Yeah, right. Go ahead then, Craig.
Just wanted to come in there and just clarify a few points, because there is a bit of a detailed planning history to the site. Obviously, members are fully aware of, and the previous application was seeking the 2 park homes and up to 4 touring caravans at the site. At the previous planning committee, there was a bit of miscommunication, I feel, in terms of what the discussion was around. So the discussion was around 4 additional pitches, and the touring caravans comprised of those. So when the applicant agreed to remove the caravans from the site, he was talking about the pitches rather than the touring caravans, which would be used for his own use. So this planning application is seeking to rectify that condition in relation to it's not applying for any additional pitches for wider family members. These touring caravans would only be used for the residential purposes of the applicant. And there's obviously that condition there to retain the use for the applicant and their son, which are identified on the Gypsy and Traveller housing assessment. They're a registered local family, they have a local connection, and Monmouthshire County Council has a duty to ensure that we provide an appropriate home for this Gypsy and Traveller family. So in terms of so clarifying the point really around the previous planning considerations, as a planning committee, you did determine to take the touring caravans out. I do believe that was on the view that they were for the wider family, for the transient nature of families moving through the site. The applicant has expressed that that's not what they wanted. They do need touring caravans on the site. It's part of their cultural heritage and the transient nature of how Gypsy and Travellers move. So it's a salient point that they do want to accommodate up to 4 touring caravans on this particular site. This application is seeking to allow the touring caravans anywhere on the site. And as planning officers, we've reviewed this as part of the previous application and as part of this application, and we do feel there is sufficient space on the site for up to 4 touring caravans. Highways officers have also reviewed this planning application and consider that there's enough space on this site to touring caravans and to be safe access and egress onto the site. So in terms of highway safety and the site as a space, there is certainly enough of space there for it. In terms of the visual amenity, this is certainly a matter that planning committee members have to consider as to whether the visual amenity of the caravans on the site are detrimental to the area. As planning officers, we certainly do not feel that it would have an adverse impact on the landscape, given that the landscape setting, and also given that the sighting of other caravans in the area on a number of other sites, which you do notice within the open countryside. With regards to the touring area and the turning area, from this photograph, you can see that there is considered to be enough turning area for the site. And as on other sites, this would be a matter for the applicant to manage when leaving the site and when moving and manoeuvring around the site. This is a matter for them. But certainly, given the evidence, looking on site and reviewing it, there is enough space there to do those manoeuvres. In terms of the septic tank that Councillor Webb has raised, and this has got approval. In terms of the drainage hierarchy, this has gone through and has been reviewed, and it has got consent, and obviously building control will be monitoring that in the longer term. So I hope that clarifies officers' recommendation in terms of the consideration to the touring caravan. We do feel that it is part of the council's duty, as it outlines in the Planning for Gypsy Traveller and Show People Site Circular 005/2018, that we need to deliver appropriate sites, the accommodation for gypsy and traveller communities, and it could also have a beneficial impact on the settled community by reducing the number of legal challenges and costs incurred challenging unfettered encampments and sites across the county. This is a site which delivers a site for a locally connected gypsy and traveller site, which is recognised on our as part of our assessment, and it does, I think, well, allowing the use for touring caravans as well as the additional the park homes does allow for that developer to have a accommodation which is appropriate to their cultural beliefs. So in terms of the site, we do feel it certainly that the site can take the development and it is appropriate for the site. So hopefully that clarifies the matters for you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. And also, if they've got a tanker coming in to empty the septic tank and they've got touring caravans, all they have to do is drive them down the road to accommodate more space for the lorry, presumably, like anybody else in that sort of situation. Anyway, Councillor Murphy, you're next to ask or comment, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Councillor Brown has said most of what I was going to say, so I shan't repeat it, except to say that looking at the site at the moment, there's already a couple of vans and a lorry. The lorry is on the lawn at the bottom of the site at the moment. How we get 4 caravans and the number of permitted vehicles there is still of great concern to me. So my position is still that I think that it's overdevelopment. If there were a lower number of caravans, I think I'd have difficulty. I abstained last time, and I should do the same again, because although I understand all of the rationale for the officer's decision, I still think that the amount of use and the amount of vehicles and paraphernalia that's going on that site is going to cause us all sorts of problems. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. And there's no size given, I believe, to the touring caravans, because they can vary as you see them yourselves on the road, for 6 berth to almost 2 berths. So we've got no sort of gauge of how big these touring caravans are, which is a bit of a concern. Anyway, next to comment is Councillor Howard, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think it would have been helpful if perhaps we had a scale plan that showed where the touring caravans might be sited. And they, obviously there's a limit to their maximum size for highway purposes. So even if we'd taken that the largest of those, we might have had maybe been able to judge it a little bit better. But so I appreciate the concerns and the part about the visual amenity. I'm also mindful of other applications, gypsy and traveller pitches that I've seen within Monmouthshire and with my other hat on, and generally speaking, they do have utility or day rooms. They'll have a static caravan, and there will be tourists with it. So it's of no surprise that there's a demand for that, and I appreciate that's part of their culture and something they need for their way of life. So absolutely no objection whatsoever for that. It's just that I suppose I need to be convinced in a way that there is space on site for them to be accommodated without without it being looking as if it's rammed with vehicles and caravans and structures. The condition 4, yeah, again, I support the officer's report in that respect, and I note it's not referred to, and Phil didn't speak to it specifically, but you know, in the list of model conditions there is a condition very much like the one that's in the report that specifically suggests the naming of individuals to whom the personal permission applies. So there's nothing unusual in that or unfair, and so I'm happy for that to be retained. I mean, whichever way committee goes on this, the applicant does have a right of appeal to either condition, and it could, well, there's preferable to try and resolve it through the planning authority. Could have addressed his concerns that way. So what I'd ask is if Craig could give some further comment on where within the site it's proposed to locate the touring caravans. And I was looking at the photographs there, and obviously I remember the site from when we visited. It looks as if it's been set up, or rather it's been subdivided internally with other timber fences. So you've got that, that's it, like the grass amenity area there, and there's some play equipment for the kids. And that's a little bit different to the plan that follows further down. So I'm just wondering then where in relation to that those tourists will be sited. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I think it's been very generous saying it's grass because it looks just like docks, like when we were there before. And also, when you say touring caravans, are they caravans that are towed by another vehicle, or these motorised ones that they have today? Because if they're all individually towed, there's going to be far more vehicles. I believe, Craig, you wish to come next. Perhaps you can enlighten us on some of this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, in terms of where the caravans will go, they can be sited anywhere within the red line, so anywhere on that site. There is plenty of sites, even on the top level, on the grassed area, or on the front area on the track. The size of the touring caravans, that would be determined by the Caravan Act. So it is set within there in terms of what the dimensions of a touring caravan is. But in stating that, the condition would be up to 4. It might be the applicant only has 1 on there, or 2 on there, or 3 on there. It depends on where they are. But the maximum we think the site can take is up to 4, and we think that is sufficient and in line with the original recommendation to approve. Obviously, having a caravan is part of a Gypsy and travellers' culture and heritage and their way of life, and just to express that somebody couldn't have a caravan, potentially that could have a harmful impact on the well-being of that person, who obviously which is integral to their heritage and their culture. So in a similar way that if there was a residential property on this site, would there be a concern with someone storing a touring caravan on their driveway? I think that's the consideration. I think this is quite a significant site to consider. I think that's the sort of thing that we should be looking at, is to, in terms of when members are considering this, is in terms of the type of use that is being presented to us. Is that use appropriate? Is there enough space on the site? And with this, the council is doing their duty in terms of providing a home for this Gypsy and traveller family, which are identified as with a local connection in the longer term. So I think we really have to be careful in terms of considering this application and considering the development and providing appropriate forms of accommodation, which is what the circular outlines. And I do feel that allowing the touring caravans as outlined in the report does do that. It does provide that appropriate level of accommodation for this Gypsy and traveller family. So hopefully that does cover the point that the touring caravans can be sited anywhere on the site. Highways officers have reviewed this, and obviously as members and officers we've looked at this as well, and we don't think it's overdevelopment. In terms of visual amenity, although I echo, I hear the concerns of members. There are a number of caravans plotted around in a stone's throw from this site at other sites, which you can see from the road and from other vantage points. So I wouldn't suggest that the visual amenity, that the harm to visual amenity is there. I don't think that is a reason for refusal, but obviously that's for members to consider.
Thank you, Craig. I know Councillor Brown wishes to come back, but I shall take Councillor Harris first, and then Councillor Brown, perhaps you can then sum up afterwards. Councillor Harris first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just to clarify what sort of caravans are on there. If you look on page 66, section 1.3, the applicant's opinion that the space would be capable of accommodating 4 5.5 metre times 2.3 metre touring caravans. So he's talking about touring caravans and not motorhomes.
Thank you, Councillor. I missed that. Thank you. I had overlooked the size that was stated in the report.
Yeah, the other thing, of course, is if that is the case, they're likely to be single axle caravans at 5.5 metres, yes, rather than the giant double axle jobs, but who knows? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. You obviously know a bit about caravans, Councillor Harris, which I don't. So anyway, thank you. Councillor Brown, please.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, yes, thank you. I think, I mean, what I would suggest is that if from the discussion we've had, if the committee is minded to approve, then I would ask for a split decision to follow the officer recommendation on personal consent, and then basically with regard to the caravans, I think it needs to be deferred to actually look at the need for amended plans, landscaping looking at again, and also a highway condition, because basically the officer's recommendation on a highway condition on turning circle was based on the idea that the cars will be parked at the flat plateau at the top of the site, and the turning circle was then available because there weren't any caravans in the way to do it at the bottom end of the site. And part of the criterion of policy H8 requires developments to have a safe and convenient access to the highway network and not cause traffic congestion or safety problems. In the original highways report, it's reported as stating that the applicant has provided supporting drawings that generally depict the layout of the proposal, but are considered to be lacking in information to clearly demonstrate how the site will be laid out. The applicant has not provided details of the numbers and layout of the required level of parking associated with the proposal. The applicant has not indicated how the proposed touring caravans will be sited. No turning area has been indicated for the touring of cars and towed touring caravans, etc. Now the problem is that the condition on this one, basically on condition 1, it talks about the plans, but the highway condition was not discharged by the amended plans presented today, as this did not include the 4 caravans. In my opinion, the application needs to be deferred so that full details can be considered as recommended in the original highway assessment. So basically, I think that there isn't enough information to ensure that the site works properly and that there can be safe access and egress from the site as demonstrated by the, and I actually looked at the original dimensions of the site, and there was great difficulty with the park homes, because the width of the site at the back isn't that great, of actually fitting them in. So you know, to say they can be anywhere in the site doesn't really allow for the normal landscaping considerations, and I think that in view of policy H8, it needs to be, this area needs to be deferred so that basically the plans can be looked at again, the highway condition on the turning circle can be looked at again, and also really it's not really a consideration of whether there should be caravans on the site or not. I mean, it's really due to the turning circle and the safe access and egress onto a 50-60 mile zone, which is both for the residents' safety and of the site, and also the local residents' safety. So I think there's too many loose ends on this. I mean, it may be that if the site is looked at in more detail, it may be that it will be better to have, say, 2 touring caravans because there's sufficient space on the site. But I really don't think that we've got enough information at the moment to be making a decision to make sure that the site works properly. So I would recommend a split decision, the original following the officer's recommendation on the personal consent issue, but the issue about the touring caravans to be deferred so that we have amended plans and the turning circle is looked at in terms of site-specific information, because we've got conflicting information from the officers, because the first report we had from an officer said that it appeared to be crammed, and the second report we've got says that there's ample space, but both agree that it's a modest site. And yeah, I appreciate that you know, caravans are sort of part and parcel of the gypsy and traveller lifestyle, but you know, you've got to have a site that's big enough, and that's why you know, it's a question of looking at whether you know, a different sort of number of caravans may be appropriate, for example. And I think in terms of a pitch, you normally look at basically a mobile utility block and then a park home and then 1 touring caravan. That's the standard pitches, not 4 touring caravans. So it's a question of the fact that too much is being asked for the dimensions of the site for it to be safely operated, and that's the reason why I'm requesting that it's just really to give reassurance that the site will be working in the manner that's best anticipated for the safety of the residents who will actually use it.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Councillor Brown. I believe Craig wishes to comment now, and then Roger Harris. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to sort of clarify really that in terms of highway safety, there's no ambiguity here. Officers are saying quite openly and outlined in the report that there are no highway objections to this proposal. The proposal and the application has been reviewed.
That's not correct. They've actually asked for a condition to be put on it, a turning circle as per the original application, and that's been ignored by the planning officers.
As part of this planning application?
Yes, yes, part of this planning application. If you read what the highways comment has said, it has said subject to the conditions, and it goes back to the original conditions in the application. And they haven't been included, which I think it's important. If you can have more on the site, it's even more important to make sure that there's a proper turning circle for the highway safety side. I mean, all I'm saying is basically, you know, it could be that when you've worked out these calculations, all 4 caravans are appropriate or 2, but there isn't enough. The plan isn't detailed enough, as stated in the Highways original report to the committee, and I just think that it would be a mistake just not to defer it to look at these details. To look at it again, so that highways and officers can look at site dimensions to check that there is going to be sufficient space. That's all I'm saying.
Madam Chair, can I speak?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Brown. We'll leave it now to Craig to answer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Highways officers have reviewed the details and the turning area and have discharged that condition in relation to the turning area. So
that was when there was only parked cars. Sorry, I've looked at all the applications.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
This application, section 73, to vary that consent, so that condition that is part of this consent, and highway officers have reviewed the turning area that's been provided in light of the up to 4 touring caravans, and as outlined in the report, planning officers and highway officers consider this is sufficient space to turn the touring caravans, and
that's not what the reports say. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Let Craig finish, please. Craig?
Yes, I as I'm saying, Councillor Brown, highways officers have reviewed this planning application in light of the turning area and the space, and reviewed whether it's acceptable, and raising no objections to the proposed development. They haven't raised any concerns, and they think it's sufficient. The amount of space.
Subject to conditions on the report, as per the original.
Chair, I'm fed up with this. We're supposed to have a protocol where hands are raised, and you know, the Councillor Brown keeps intervening, and you know, she should stop.
I have mentioned for her to stop. Thank you, Councillor Harris, and I want Craig to finish what he is saying, please.
I hadn't really much more to add to those comments in terms of the highways officers have reviewed, and I want to reassure members when they're considering this planning application that their officers have had a look at this space. They've had a look at whether the touring caravans can move. Your highways officers have looked at it and reviewed it, and the touring caravans for the use of this family on that site are considered to be acceptable. And there is a approved landscaping scheme which has been approved as part of the planning application. So in terms of the visual amenity aspect and the overcrowdingness of the development, there isn't considered to be a reason to refuse the application on those grounds. This application would provide touring caravans for the Gypsy and Traveller family, which is part of their cultural heritage, and there doesn't appear to be a reason to warrant refusal of the planning application or for it to be deferred. I think we need to make a decision based on the merits of the planning application in front of us.
And that's so that they can exit the site in the forward gear, presumably. Anyway, thank you very much for that, Craig. Councillor Harris now, please.
Whoops. Thank you, Madam Chair. Craig's just confirmed what I was going to say. Basically, you know, the inference from Councillor Brown is the officers just haven't done a decent job here, and basically don't know what they're talking about. Well, I don't go along with that. I think all the information is there, and you know, it's, if you like, it's one word against another, but we have officers, professionals, for very good reason, and you know, we have a duty to listen to what they say, or if they're not good enough, get rid of them. But I'm sure that's not the case in this case. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Harris. Councillor Webb, please.
Yeah, I mean, members have all had a lot of opportunity to look at plans, and I don't really feel that this is very clear. It's like a pencil plan with bits added in here and there with ink. I mean, it's not the normal plans that we would accept as a planning committee, in my view. That's my view. I don't understand the site layout. It's all just sort of scribbled in here and this, that and the other there, just done very casually. And I feel I agree with Councillor Brown that we really do need a proper plan of the size and what everything is going on to that site, because it's very restricted. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I think.
Quickly, please.
My apologies. I think basically it is because I would prefer to have the amended plan so that we know exactly where everything is being cited, and just really because of the highways report mentioning that condition, just to double check on it. And I think you know, for that reason it would be better. I mean, a deferral could just be for the next month, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Giles Howard.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just listening to Craig's response earlier about where the caravans could be sited on the land, and that could include the grassed area at the front of the site closest to the road. And whilst other members were talking, I had a look at the discharge of condition application, which set out and there was obviously condition for a soft landscaping scheme. I'm just wondering what the whole point of that was then, and that, you know, considering that included the grassed area to the front of the site, if then within a matter of months of approving that discharge application, then that could be the effect of that could be overturned by agreeing to the siting of those caravans there. And I appreciate the members have made comments about, you don't need to have consent for, well, nobody needs consent to have a caravan on the drive at the front of their house, and indeed if somebody wanted to use that as ancillary sleeping accommodation, they could do that without permission. But this is an intrinsic part of the application, not something that may happen on an infrequent basis, and that's why I just wanted to be clear about where they'd be cited for the benefit of the wider appearance of the site, as I would for any site, regardless of the applicant, their background or their intentions for the caravan. And so I just would be happier, as Councillor Webb and Brown would be, just to have a little bit more detail. But otherwise, I've no objection at all to the principle of the caravans going there, and no concerns on highway safety. And I've seen the response from the highway officers as well to this application, who similarly don't have an issue. It's just a bit of clarity that I'd like, as other members would.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Craig, would you like to come back, please?
Yeah, I just wanted to express, obviously, the previous application showing the grassed area. This is a section 73, and this is obviously supersede any previous planning application, but there was no, obviously this application is purely looking at the 4 touring caravans adding on to the planning consent, and it has been considered within the red line, so the whole of the site. And as planning officers, there's no reason why that the grassed area wasn't part of an overwhelming landscaping scheme with regards to visual amenity. It was just a grassed area. It wasn't there for any other value, so there's no reason why caravans can't be cited within this, and obviously this application would supersede that. So I think we're fine procedurally on that. In terms of information submitted, well, the plans, in terms of being a valid planning application, the plan is there. It does show and identify the sites to scale and to where landscaping will be. So in terms of information, as planning officers, I think we can ask for any additional more if we need to make a decision based on the information in front of us. We know that there's where the 2 park homes are going to be sited. We know that the 4 touring caravans will be sited within the red line. I do feel that's enough information for members to make a decision as to whether they agree with the officer's recommendation or if they want to make an alternative decision.
Right, thank you, Craig. Well, I think Councillor Brown, you've got your hand up again, but this will have to be quick, please. A quick comment, and I wish for you to move.
Yeah, just basically that.
Move the application, I mean.
Yeah, just basically that in the original application, the caravans were going to be sited at the top area at the top, and that's not clear at the moment. So basically, I'd like to move for the split decision to refuse the personal consent, and then to defer the application on the 4 caravans, so that we can have we can look at amended plans and a turning circle, so we're clear where everything in the site is going to be sited, and that doesn't have to be a long deferment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Anne Webb.
Could I second that, please?
Right, thank you. Craig, do you wish to sum up now on exactly what members are going to be voting for if it's a split decision?
I think the members are voting on the agreement of the condition number 4 for the personal condition, and then to defer condition 3. Is that the motion, Louise?
No, I think the officer recommended that the personal consent should be refused because of it being in open countryside, and that the variation should be refused, and that was the split decision. And the second part is to defer to look at amended plans and the highway considerations for the 4 touring caravans.
Okay, my advice in relation to that is that we have reviewed the highways information, and that has been looked at, and that the touring caravans would be within the red line. So my advice to members is that we have enough information to make a decision based on what's in front of us.
Right.
But should we have a vote for that now?
Madam Chair.
Councillor David Evans.
Yeah, I'd like to propose we accept the application as it's been explained by Craig.
Right, do you propose that?
Second that.
Right.
So we've now got 2 motions. So I think we need to take the first one, a vote on the first motion. It's just been seconded now, I think.
My motion was already seconded by Councillor Webb.
Councillor Brown has been forwarded and seconded, and now we've got a second motion that's been forwarded and seconded, so we'll have to take the first one first, I think.
Right, we'll take the first one of Councillor Brown. If you wish to issue that now, please, so everybody's clear on what you're proposing.
Chair, if I may, I'm not entirely sure what information to be putting into the chat on this, because it's a split decision.
It might be better to do, Chair, might be better to do a split vote on it.
Yeah, that's what I was indicating.
I would suggest doing the officer recommendation is for refusal of the variation on personal consent. So if we do that first, and then if we take a second vote on the idea of deferring the variation on the 4 touring caravans second, and then people are clear what they're voting on, and then take the third one would be then the proposal that's being put forward to approve the split decision via the officer's recommendation, because it's still a split decision even with the officer's recommendation.
Yes, so Craig, do you wish to give clarity on that now?
Well, I refer to Denzel because I think that the first motion was to defer from Louise Brown.
I think now that we've had that the motion has been proposed and seconded, I think we need to have a vote on that.
On the deferring of all of it, or just part of the caravans?
No, so Councillor Brown's motion was to go along with the officer recommendation to keep the personal consent, and then to. So
shall we take that one now straight away so that there's no more confusion? We'll take
this is to defer for further information in relation to the location of the touring caravans, and then to go along with the officer recommendation to keep the personal permission.
So you want to defer the caravan numbers and not the personal?
Yes, I think that's what Councillor Brown was saying, that she wants to
Yeah, I think it's basically. I think it will probably
go along with the officer recommendation.
It would probably be simpler to do the if Denzel agrees, would be to do the vote first of all on the going along with the officer recommendation on refusing the personal consent as the first vote, and then the second one on the deferral of the caravan.
Exactly. That's what I thought we would do with the personal first, and then that is out of the way because there's less controversy over that.
Okay, I think in that case we do have. It's just because we do have a currently proposed motion, so I think Councillor Brown will have to confirm that she's happy for that motion to be withdrawn.
Sorry, my motion has always stayed the same, basically to accept the officer's recommendation on the personal consent and then to defer the one on the caravans.
Yes, but so that's the motion that's being proposed. You have a vote on that motion.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
so
right.
I think I think it's probably best if we just have a vote on that motion, and then we move on to the second motion, which is to approve the officer's recommendation in full. So if Councillor Brown's successful, then
sorry, we haven't got anything in the chat bar as of yet. My clarification, as far as I can gather, is that the first vote would be for the recommendation of it being a personal consent.
Yes, so the first motion is to defer in relation to the location of the touring caravans, and because that's the main thrust of Councillor Brown's point, and then also to go along with the officer recommendation. So if that passes, then on condition 4. So it's to defer on condition 3 and to approve condition and to confirm condition 4. So maybe if that's what's put in the chat bar,
that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah.
Right. Everyone clear now?
Chair, if I can just clarify then, the first vote will be defer condition 3, is that correct?
Is condition 3 the caravan one?
Yes, I believe.
Would it be easier to just put, to avoid confusion, to put defer caravans and
number of caravans, touring caravans?
Yeah, and agree with, and then do that as a separate vote, or and agree with the officer recommendation on personal consent being refused.
Are they refusing?
Well, the officer has recommended the variation on personal consent is refused.
Oh yes, yeah, the variation. It's the variation
in any event.
Yes.
Chair, can I suggest that we take a vote on whether committee members agree with the officer's recommendation? And then if that recommendation isn't met, then take a vote on Councillor Brown's suggestion.
Yes, I think that would be a good clarity. Right.
Councillor Brown?
I don't know, because I think it's important. Why don't we just do a vote on requesting deferral for the caravans first to make it simpler?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. After discussing it here, I think if we do a vote on the amendment that Councillor Brown has proposed, which is the deferral, and then once we know what's happening in relation to the deferral, we can then we're then able to vote on the proposal as a whole. Do you understand? Yes. So we'll have a vote on deferral.
Yeah. Yes. And then that's out of the way.
4. Yeah, and I think that's condition 4, isn't it? The location of the touring caravans.
Right. So we'll vote on that then, about the touring caravans first of all, before or against a deferral.
So, Chair, if I can just clarify, I'll put the chat bar up now and say deferred number of touring caravans. Are you happy with that wording for the first one?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
If you just bear with me a second while I put this chat in. It might take a little while. Just bear with me.
Right. Thank you, Richard. Are you happy with that, Craig? He's gone.
Sorry, Ruth?
Are you happy with that?
Well, given legal colleagues' advice, I think it's right the members, given the motion from Councillor Brown and seconded by Councillor Webb, that vote is had with regards to the amended plans. Obviously, I've made my views and my advice and clarity to members in terms of officers' view on the planning application, but I think you need to take that vote as to whether to defer for more details.
Yes, thank you, Craig.
Chairman?
Yes.
Chairman, wouldn't it be more appropriate to just have a called vote, just a spoken vote, rather than...
I'm to be guided by the legal way of doing this, I'm afraid, Councillor Webb. It might have been, but it's quite a contentious issue at the moment.
I think the agreed process was that we would only do a called vote if it looked like it was
a split decision.
A split decision, or enough people haven't been able to vote to possibly tip the scale. So until we've had the results in, I don't think we can.
Thank you. Point taken. Thank you. Thank you.
It's in the chat bar now, Chair.
You happy with that, Denzel?
Yeah, so it looks like one member's not been able to vote, but we've got 8 in favour of deferral and 4 against deferral.
That's on the number of touring caravans.
Yes, in relation to the number of touring caravans only. So that motion to amend by Councillor Brown has passed. So that will be deferred. We've still got the additional element of the split decision, which is the motion to refuse the request to change it from a personal condition only. So we need now to take a vote on that, which has already been forwarded and seconded. So that motion will be to go along with the office's recommendation to retain the personal permission.
Right, you happy with putting that chat bar up, Richard?
Yeah, Chair, are you happy for me to say to agree the officer recommendation?
Yes. Councillor Brown, you're happy with that?
Regarding 4, because you don't want to mix it up with anything else.
Yes, in relation to condition 4 for the personal permission.
Chairman.
Yes.
Could you just check with Councillor Brown that what she's asking for, which has now been passed, is all she's asking for, and we don't get to next month and find there's something else we need to discuss and we can't decide on. We want to be absolutely clear as to what we are doing.
Yeah, sorry, could I just, I mean, with regard to deferral, it was to look at amended plans, highway conditions, and to check on what number of caravans is suitable for the site, you know, from 0 to 4, really.
And what about the layout?
And the layout of the plans and the dimensions, so we know where everything is sited and where the landscaping is, because at the moment we don't know where anything's going to be sited.
Madam
Chairman,
and the
twice I put my hand up and nobody's taken any notice. I don't want to say anything now because it's been discussed too much, but I would really like this meeting to be overruled by the chairman and the officers, not one councillor overtaking the whole meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. We're doing our utmost, but it is rather a difficult application with this one that we are facing at the moment. But we've made headway now. It is deferring the application on the number of caravans, touring caravans on that site, so that we can have a detailed look at the layout and so on, although I don't think it's going to be any different than what Craig has already given us in his presentation. So we're now going to go to the personal recommendation about the personal use of this site for those particular gypsies and travellers that are on that site.
Only.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, while the vote's taking place, can I just make a brief point that may be helpful for the next meeting? And that's when I looked at the application from 2019, the initial one we considered, we granted consent, and the officers recommended condition 6, which was all about the site layout and the number of touring caravans and number of vehicles. So in essence, we're not asking for any greater detail than was recommended by the officers when we considered it first time round. So if that to my mind would encapsulate the information that members are looking to have.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Right. Are you all ready to vote now on this last part of the application, please?
I think so. We're still waiting for 4 councillors four members to vote. Okay, we've had 11 responses now, all of which are in favour of the officer recommendation. There have been none for refusal and none for abstention, so that motion is passed.
Right, thank you. Would you like to Craig, to sum up now exactly where we are on that application?
To my mind, we've deferred the application in relation to further details to be submitted by the applicant. It would be good to get some clarity from the planning committee in terms of what detail that would be. I understand what Councillor Howard just said, but this site plan has superseded that information, so I don't think we'll have much additional information come forward from the applicant, because that information has been submitted with this application in terms of where the caravans will go within the red line and the highway objections. But we will give the applicant that time needed to gather the information, but I can't foresee any additional. So it'd be good to get some clarity on what information is actually needed prior to making the decision. So good to get that from maybe Councillor Brown, who's raised that motion. And also the second part of the vote is that planning committee members have agreed with the officer's recommendation to refuse the removal of condition number 4 and to reinstate the personal consent. So that element has been dealt with, but we need now need to sort out the condition number 3 in relation to touring caravans. So it'd be good if we can get that clarity so we can ask the applicant exactly what information, the additional information is required.
Right, thank you, Craig, and hopefully that will come back to next month's committee meeting.
I think the information is to do with the site plan, to make so that we've got the dimensions about the park homes and the meters and where exactly they're going to fit and what spaces there are in between to ensure the turning circle, and also that the caravans, you know, determining how many should be on the site, and also the you know, the turning circle available.
I think Councillor Brown, that we've discussed this long enough on this application, and if there's any more things that you need to discuss as the ward member, I think you can do those with Craig or whoever officer is in charge of this application, so that we can bring this committee meeting this afternoon to a close.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I don't believe there's anything else that we need to discuss apart from that was the last application of the day, and I wish you all a safe journey and good health, and thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon. Thank you.